Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Happy Friday. I'm coming to you guys live on June 12th, 2026. We're going to be doing live astrology readings on the channel, answering your guys' questions about this up and coming new moon in Gemini and everything else in between. So we've got people asking questions about synastry, timing, all kinds of fun stuff tonight. So I'm excited to do the live with you guys. If you can see me, give me a thumbs up, like this video, let other people know that we are live. While you're here, consider subscribing to the channel, and obviously you'll get videos throughout the week if you hit that bell button. I'm always here on Fridays doing either tarot or astrology, but I'm also here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays talking about what's going on in the cosmos. We've got lots of content on the channel, new and full moon reports, retrograde videos, Sundays, astro weather, and much more. So please consider either joining my memberships or subscribing if you want to see more of that stuff. And I'm gonna let you guys know you have 5 minutes. So we're gonna put 5 minutes on the clock. If you guys haven't already gotten in the queue for your reading, you can scan the QR code right here. It's gonna take you to my PayPal. And we are doing answering one question based off of your natal information. You can ask about like the new moon in Gemini, or if you have questions about natal aspects or timing, for $55 US. And we're doing synastry readings if you have questions about relationships for $75. So please guys, in the memo box, it's very important when you go to PayPal, I need your date of birth information. So I need your accurate time, date, location. Please spell out the month and give me the AM or the PM and your one question that you want in regards to the month ahead. Now, as always, we always take our level 4 members first. It pays to be a member. You guys are going to get shout outs. You support me as a full-time content creator. You also get to be a part of my horoscope club where you get daily horoscopes for the 12 signs, and you get to skip the line. So you guys can get a reading once a month. If you want to get more, you can. You just have to pay for them, but you can choose between tarot and astrology, and you don't have to wait. So I'm going to say hi to everybody. We've got a lot of people who are already in the queue. So thank you guys, and I'll give you the laundry list of who's in the queue in just a second. So what's up, Sahad? We've got Luna, we've got Deanna that may or may not be here. Junie's here, Steph is in. What's up, Claudine? Rachel's back with Pajama Guy stuff. Sure, Apple Newt, just let me know what your question is and I'll add you. What's up, Gal? All right, 5 minutes on the clock. So that's for everybody. So I will put Appy on there. Add you to my list. And I just want to give you guys a heads up. Sometimes, for whatever reason, and I say this every time, when you leave questions like a day early, sometimes it doesn't register and I don't see it when I do eventually go live. So I'll just let you guys know that if it disappeared, you might have to send it again. But I'm going to let you guys know who I've got in the queue right now. So we've got level 4 people. Luna, Diana, Junie, Steph, and Apple Newt, you guys are all in the queue. And then as for everybody else who paid for a reading today, we've got Maral, Hassini, Danielle, Sahad, Rachel, Donica, Claudine, Meredith, and Rachel P. Okay, so if I miss anybody, let me know. We're putting Rosie in there. Thanks, Rosie. I'll add you into the queue. And last call will be in about 5 minutes. So scan that QR code if you guys want to get in. You guys will hear me calling out names. I'm answering the questions in the order that I receive them. So for whatever reason, if you're like last on the list and you can't wait, you can always come back to this reading. We're going to leave it up on the channel. Just scan ahead through the scans until you see your name and your date of birth information. And then you guys can come back and you can watch the reading at a later date. Thanks, Rosie. Appreciate you. I got you. For people asking how it works, scan the QR code. Make sure you guys pay the $55 for a reading, and then you also are going to need to put in your date of birth information. And we're going to kind of get on with the show. So we're going to start with Luna, Diana, and then Junie. When you hear your name coming up, that's me letting you know that your reading's coming up, so that way you guys can check in. All right, so we're going to start first with Luna. Let's see what Luna has to say. Hi Candace, would like to get my monthly reading. Anything I need to know this month, any important transits I need to know. All right, well, Luna is a Cancer rising. She's got her sun in Pisces and her moon is in Virgo. Obviously, one of the most important transits that you're going to want to be watching for is anything that's going to be connected with the moon. And obviously, being a Cancer rising, you're going to be seeing Mercury is going to be turning retrograde in your sign later this month. And actually, over the next couple days, we are coming into the territory where Mercury is going to be coming into shadow. So that means that we're going to see Mercury going through the degrees, which it will retrograde back through. So that's something that I think is rather significant. And also, if you look at what's going on with this lunar transit you've been kind of going through, the South Node in Virgo has been moving through the conjunction to your moon. So that's kind of like a major emotional clearing that you've been going through for like the better part of like the last like month and a half. That's wrapping up. Perhaps you'll really feel the change once the South Node is kind of getting into Leo here pretty soon, but you're still under that transit. So something that I would really think about with the South Node still in aspect to your moon is what is changing for you in terms of third house themes, where you communicate, how you relate to neighbors, how you're relating to family members. Is there a need to kind of reflect on some of these emotional changes that are going on? I think that's going to be a big part of what's going to be happening with the Mercury retrograde in your sign. I also think that, you know, with Mercury turning retrograde, it's happening after we see the Mercury square Saturn. So like for a lot of my Cancer risings, they have found that there's a little bit of like maybe stress and anxiety because it's tied to your whole sign 12th house in how you communicate, how you express yourself when dealing with your career, authority figures, parents, bosses, anything revolving around kind of feeling like maybe people are being a little bit more critical of you. Thankfully, you know, you are going through a Mercury Saturn transit, so I feel like you already had a little bit of this that kind of started up before. And Saturn's actually been squaring your South Node in Cancer and your North Node in Capricorn. Now, whenever you have planets that are going through a square to the natal, you know, North and South Node, think of this as almost like a fork in the road. And you're being asked to really bring in Saturn. So that's going to be about relationships through your 7th, your kind of intimate relationships, and also connection and financial themes. And it's trying to ask you to get out of old emotional ways of being, right? South Node in Cancer, your old security, your old identity. So you've got like two kind of like South Node kind of lunar aspects going on. And then it's also asking you to integrate more seriousness in your 7th house. Who's guiding you, who you're working with, who you're relating to, who you're partnering with. So I feel like you're somebody who's not going to get as caught up in like the Mercury retrograde kind of conflict, but I would pay attention to what has come up over the last couple of days where you have felt like, man, I just can't get a word in, or I'm kind of feeling like people are being critical of me, or I'm having like a parent or a boss, you know, that's kind of like on my back. And you're going to get the opportunity through the Mercury retrograde to reevaluate and reassess how you connect and communicate with other people. Mercury retrograde in the 1st house, it's pretty, you know, common that you see, you know, there's changes with your appearance, there's changes with your communication style. Mercury is intercepted through Gemini in your 12th house. So I use the term for my Cancer risings this month with the retrograde that's coming in, and, you know, the North and South Node square Uranus, that having Gemini in your 12th house means that there's like this constant dialogue that's going on where you're going round and round basically, and there's like this sense of you feeling like you're getting in your own head, and it's like monkeys with cymbals, you know, crashing. And so it can represent the things that maybe bring you anxiety, the things that you don't really share with other people that you're thinking about but that you don't say. And it's trying to get you to kind of get in touch more so with your emotions and realize that, okay, maybe the things that you aren't saying is bringing up some unnecessary kind of emotional stress. How can you better kind of stand up for yourself, you know, speak what's on your mind, and not necessarily challenge authority, but speak with more confidence and not let other people kind of, you know, get you down, or other people kind of challenge you. So that's going to be rather important. Now, the retrograde is not actually going to start until the end of the month. So you're going to see a situation when that happens down here where it will turn retrograde just short of a conjunction with Jupiter. So it is possible that a lot of Cancer and Cancer risings are kind of feeling like, okay, I'm needing to make some kind of changes when it comes to, you know, Jupiter things. Work, health, and hobbies. It could also be things that are connected to your relationship with your schedule, your, you know, your fellow employees. And in your case, Jupiter is actually connected to your 10th house. So it's definitely going to be about how you're communicating your needs in the workplace. Maybe there's like a little bit of like a financial kind of side to this as well, or like a situation where you're reevaluating or reassessing your resources. You're having to budget. Maybe you're contemplating making changes at work, but you're like, wait, I need to make sure that this is a good move before I do it. Good news is a lot of my Cancer risings are going to see some pretty positive things happening in their financial life this summer. You know, eclipses in your second house. You're going to see Venus is going through the second house now, and Jupiter is going to be going into Leo. So you're going to start to see that harmonizing, especially in August with Saturn. And this will equate to making more money, feeling more confident, maybe some style changes that are going to be happening for you as well. And that Mercury retrograde is going to be continuing all the way until July 23rd. So it will actually station right around 16 degrees, still slightly in a square to Saturn, also squaring your own natal Mercury. And I really feel like for a Cancer rising, I'd be like, you need to get in touch with your emotions. You need to be paying attention to your body. You need to get adequate sleep. Also, it's really important not to let some of the work stress that's kind of going on, you know, to keep you from feeling well or feeling productive or being able to kind of like be on the ball. And once you start getting like that south node away from your moon, which will also be happening right around the end of July, beginning of August, I think you're going to start to really feel a little bit more like calm, like your mindset's going to be better. You're not going to be so like maybe critical of yourself. And it's also going to open the door for, you know, you being able to maybe travel more or have some kind of exciting experiences when it comes to short-term trips or, you know, relationships that you have with like family or neighbors. But still, the Mercury retrograde is interesting because I've been talking to a lot of people who have been like, yeah, I haven't really seen anything sweet happen, you know, with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction. Really, I think that happening in your rising sign, it talks a lot about you needing to get in touch with what's healthy for me, what works for me, what feels productive for me, and what do I believe in when it comes to, you know, my purpose, my health, my habits. And so what if there was something that you were anticipating getting, but it didn't quite happen or didn't quite manifest, the Mercury retrograde might potentially give you the opportunity to kind of reorganize some things, reassess, certainly taking time to rest and reevaluate, kind of calm the mind. Breath work, journaling, going for walks, these kinds of things can be kind of like your meditative, you know, kind of practices to better navigate how you're dealing with some of the more unpredictable things that come up during the retrograde and also the pressure that's coming from work. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Luna. Definitely a really interesting month ahead, but I really feel like it's going to make a lot of my Cancer and Cancer risings a lot stronger and also a lot more confident as they're getting into July, okay? Just letting you guys know, readings are closed. So those of you guys who are wanting to get a reading, if you got in at the last minute, I'll let you know. But readings are closed. So if anything is sent after this time period, you guys will be refunded. Let me see if I can pull this up here. PayPal's always acting like a little bit of a pain in my butt. Let me pull it up on my phone because it's not working on my desktop. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry. All right. All right. So let's see who got in here. Those of you guys who just got in, is it Maya? M-I-A-H? Maya, April, Amanda, and Jacqueline. Okay. If you guys hear your name, that means I got you. And then, Apple Newt, did you send me your question? If you can send that to me, that would be helpful so I have it. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to move down the list. We're going to now take Diana and then Junie and then Steph. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure I got it because I didn't see it in the chat. Specifically, you sent what you were looking for? Why am I not seeing it? Oh, yeah, if you can send it again, that'd be helpful. All right, so let's pull up Diana. I don't know if she's here or not. She's always on the move. She's a Leo rising with a sun in Capricorn, and her moon is in Libra. All right, so let's see what she has to say. Hello, cashing in. This new moon is in a loose conjunction to my Jupiter. I am excited. Well, me too. Let's take a look. New moon. There we go. One of my favorite TikTokers has given me helpful hints on how to grow so I can monetize, and it's working. How can I best use this new moon energy? Wow, you hit 4K on TikTok. That's amazing. You've had bookings all week. Love it. All right, so let's take a look here for you, my dear. Basically, that's probably some of the luck and the key insight that has been coming from Jupiter. Because Jupiter is going to represent, colleagues, friends, community, people online that are helping you kind of grow your content. Jupiter rules your 5th house. So it's your creative expression, your platform, your own business, all that stuff. And so having a new moon there means, like, in a way, for the next 6 months, you have an opportunity to grow your platform even more, to communicate, connect, spread wisdom, Jupiter, and really kind of show off your brand, okay? So that's kind of a big deal. Also, something that's interesting about this is that this is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury's still in the 11th house. It hasn't gone into the 12th house yet. So what you'll probably find is over the next month, while this new moon is setting up before we get into the next one, which will be in Cancer, it's basically saying it's giving you, 30 days to reevaluate, recalibrate, see what people are reacting or responding to. I'd be watching comments, I'd be watching feedback, what other people are recommending, what other people are kind of saying aligns with them, doesn't align with them. And Jupiter is going to be also about spreading wisdom or like messages that you're receiving with the collective. Now, obviously, this is making some other nice aspects in your chart. This is forming a trine to your moon and also your Pluto. So I'm wondering, like, are you going to go, okay, here's my offerings, here's the content I'm making, here's giving like a little bit of like a behind the scenes look, here's my process, here's what I do. Oh, you want to see more? Book with me. And it's driving through the trine opportunities for people to connect with a website, right? So think like TikTok is the 11th house, or you're sharing all of your goodies, but you're trying to drive to, make a booking or get in touch with me, or here's my email. And it's really helping you when it comes to your North Node. The North Node is about, bringing in clients, Libra, connecting with relationships. People are going to connect with your messages. And I think that's part of it, that people who are possibly like listening to what kind of, predictions you're giving for the collective or what message you're receiving, certain people will resonate with that. And it might be a good time to like consider starting either a private group or potentially even like a newsletter or a way for you to be able to take people's like information. So you can start building that. So if you want to send, down the road, specials, promotions, you want to be pushing private groups, you want to be pushing certain like specials that you're doing for some of your consultations, I really recommend that because I think that would be good. It sextiles also your ascendant, so it's bringing more attention to you creating, celebrating, and sharing. And the South Node is there, so it's a bit wide, but it is sextiling the South Node. So it's helping bring in wealth and resources through the key insight of somebody who's already established on TikTok. Really great transit. A lot of my Leo risings have been telling me things have been a little rough, especially with like the South Node transits in Virgo, like not feeling as grounded financially. It is approaching a conjunction to your Saturn, which may be bringing in some like karmic relationships or connecting with people online, right? Saturn's connected to your 7th house Aquarius, who are coming to you because they're seeking solutions or they want you to help them fix a problem or they're wanting you to kind of help give them a sense of like direction, especially when it comes to health, work, productivity, kind of like Virgo things. And what you'll find is that when this becomes a full moon, right? So this will be like 6 months down the road. So let's look at the full moon. This is interesting because I talked about this in my video when I made this video, but look at when this becomes a full moon. Let's see, where is it? I think it was here, sorry. So it'll become a full moon around November 24th, 2026, because it takes the whole 6 months for the cycle to complete. It'll be conjunct Uranus in your 10th house. So it could bring you some really, really big kind of like recognition and like a much bigger platform. Moon is going to represent, something maybe that you've been working on behind the scenes. Uranus is going to be maybe a collaboration, a partnership. Maybe you're going to do something that's going to be like collaborating with like another, you know, like TikToker or somebody who's on that platform. This will also be trining Pluto in Aquarius. So I really recommend connecting and collaborating with another person. Like maybe you pay it forward, right? Like it's crazy how people can like blow up very suddenly on TikTok. I think it's amazing. But you might be paying it forward. So in the same way that somebody was like, hey, I'm going to give you some insight. This is how you make it. Now maybe, you know, your channel is totally blown up and like you're in a situation where, you know, you're giving somebody else a helping hand, or you're doing videos in collaboration like with another creator, because it's only going to be bringing more attention to, you know, kind of like your status with that full moon being there. This is also where the North and South node is squaring. So I don't know if you guys have been like, what the heck is going on energetically? Things have been like really intense because the North and South node are squaring Uranus right now. And this is why I said in my video when I talked about this, I was like, look guys, you know, you can either get with the program and start making the changes now under like this week with like the Gemini new moon, or 6 months from now, you're gonna have to make the hard kind of course correction. So most likely you would have like gotten on TikTok regardless. It was just a matter of if you were going to do it sooner or you were going to be pushed to kind of get on that platform. Maybe there's some diversification where, you know, there's going to be other apps and things that are kind of coming out and you might be considering getting on some of those apps. Maybe that's the change that's going to happen. And this will be ruled by Mercury. Okay. So Mercury is going to be right on your IC, and it'll be just coming out of like a retrograde in your 4th house. Venus will retrograde there too. So one way of looking at it is like the full moon can be, if you're moving, post-moving, and like dealing with all like the things going on in your personal life, a return through the full moon to being like, hey guys, this is where I've been, this is what I've been doing, which is interesting because when you look at the new moon that's happening like here in just a couple days, that Mercury is in the whole sign 12th house. So it tells me that you might have some ideas that you're kind of marinating on or some things you're thinking about, and maybe you don't feel like it's really ready to put out until 6 months from now. And like maybe you're waiting for your, you know, your channel to kind of grow, or you're waiting to get more traction, and then you can be putting out some bigger kind of offerings, some classes, some circles, some teaching, something like that may, you know, potentially kind of happen. But yeah, having a new moon conjunct Jupiter is an amazing thing. And I think that for you in particular, you know, I would just pay attention to whatever information they're giving you, apply over the next month, you know, some of the tips and tricks that they're recommending, and then look over, you know, this up and coming month, what worked, what didn't work, and also how you can grow and kind of evolve within your community and not be shy, because you're going to be mixing with a lot of people with Mercury in your whole sign 12. That might be international. They're going to be all over the place. You might not meet with them in person, but you're going to connect with them in a very private way. So introducing yourself, sending, you know, private messages, you know, complimenting people, wanting to kind of build community is something that I would definitely do as you're going through this transit for the next month. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Deanna. Really exciting to kind of see some of that stuff grow. All right. We've got Junie and then Steph and then Apple. Let's see, Junie. What's up, Junie? Virgo rising, sun in Taurus, moon in Capricorn. Let me scroll up here so I can see your message. All right. She says, I left our marital home in Dallas on March 24th because the stress had become overwhelming and I developed facial paralysis. I'm currently in Valencia. Whoa, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's look at this. So March 24th, and I have been discussing divorce, although neither of us seems certain that's what we truly want. I postponed my return from June 9th to June 27th because of significant anxiety about returning home given the upcoming Mars-Uranus conjunction and its aspects to my chart. Would it be astrologically wiser to return before the conjunction perfects, during it, or after it has separated if my goal is to minimize conflict and support reconciliation as possible? Or am I over my head and should I just stay in California? All right. I'm sorry to hear you're going through that. That sounds like a lot. My facial paralysis did start to get a tiny bit better when you said it would. It's in tiny progress, but I'm seeing it happen. Okay. All right. Here's the deal. And I'm just, you know me, my mind is always like, okay, I can tell you what's going to help you in this moment, but I'm also thinking about what's going on down the line. All right, so I'm going to start with my down the line thinking.
My down the line thinking is that when you get into the eclipses that are going to be coming up this summer, okay, in August, so it's not very far away. We're talking about 6 to 8 months from now. These eclipses are going to start happening in your 12th house, which is about rest, recuperation, reflection, being alone, having downtime, and obviously this complete subconscious kind of like clearing and unearthing that's going to kind of happen. So it's very different than the eclipses that you have had in your first house, which is more physical. The 12th house is more psychological. I'm coming out of these transits, they're not fun. I have found that there's a lot of changes that happens to your sleep. There's a lot of changes where you'll have really weird dreams, and then there's like stuff that you did not realize that was impacting you from the ethers or things that are kind of just trapped in your subconscious. Now they start kind of coming out to play. Positive is that you are going to have a benefic there. You're going to have Jupiter there. So it's saying that if you're away and you're in isolation during that time, likely you're going to be in a place that's sunny. You could be happier. You could be creative. You're kind of like rejoicing and having a little bit of time alone. Now, this eclipse is not coming in until August 12th. So this can mean that if you go back home, the eclipse might roll in, and it might be a couple weeks prior, a couple weeks after. You're going to want some alone time. So you need to figure out, if you go back home and you're going to be in the house with your husband, are you going to have that? I would say with like Jupiter in the 12th house, going and taking spiritual classes, meditation classes, hot yoga, art classes, doing some kind of travel on your own. Like these would be things that would really support and kind of nurture, so that way you're not feeling so overwhelmed. Now, the other side of me says, because Jupiter is your husband and Jupiter is in the 12th house, that it could mean that you guys go to counseling together, right? And that you're working with a third party, or maybe you sit down and talk to a relationship coach or somebody who's going to help you in a private space, help heal and like calm some of the drama. This is also at a psychology degree, 20 degrees. With Jupiter being in the 12th, it could also mean that you go home and then there's this feeling of being kind of like distant or not connected with your partner. Maybe you're sleeping in separate bedrooms, you know, giving each other space. Not the end of the world, but just putting that out there. And then this will trine Saturn, which is right on your south node. So it's like really positive for therapy, you know, being able to kind of heal individually or together. It doesn't matter, but hopefully with Jupiter being in your 12th house, you know, a partner would join you in this process is kind of the feeling that I'm getting. She says, yeah, if I go back, I have a lot more alone time away from my husband and have time the last few years because he no longer works from home. Okay, so this is good. You get that kind of privacy. Here's the other eclipse that I think about that's going to happen. That's going to throw some things off. There will be a full moon lunar eclipse, okay, which is concluding and completing all of the things that started while we were in March when we had that new moon in Pisces, right? So you talked about how you left in March and you were like, I have to be away. And now, boom, you know, you've got the full moon that's kind of concluding and completing this. So I'll just go out on a limb and say, I don't really think you know what you're going to do with your marriage. I think that there is a very good likelihood that you're going to give it at least until probably the end of August before you make a decision about this. Full moon, lunar eclipses are very emotional, and this one's going to be in Pisces. So it's bringing some kind of like, you know, definitive turning point in terms of how you're partnering to other people. Here's where it gets a little wild. It's going to oppose the Sun and Mercury in your sign. So it means that after you've had some time alone, now you're going to be able to decide whether or not, can we partner again? Can we spend more time together? Are we moving forward in a relationship? And this one's a little tricky because it's ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the 12th. So this could mean that your partner is the one who's like, I'm out. You know what, if you're not trying, you don't want to work things out with me, I'm going to give you your space, I will walk away. And I'm not saying he will do that, but it's possible we could draw that conclusion. You've also got the moon that's going to square your Pluto. So whatever changes with your relationships is going to dramatically transform your home. And the moon is also going to square Uranus in your 10th house of status. So it could be going from being single, you know, Uranus, to being divorced. Or it's going to dramatically change something about your career trajectory and how people see you. So there's going to be a grand mutable cross here. The positive thing is that in August, you're going to see Jupiter is going to trine Saturn. So that means that if a relationship is supposed to end, it might be abrupt, but it's like it's actually releasing things. And like Saturn on your south node might be kind of bringing up for you where emotionally or psychologically you're changing as a person. And it's not that you need this like all out brawl with your partner, but maybe you're just realizing through therapy or just self-reflection that you're like, this is not good for me. I need to release it. We need to be better with each other. And I have found that divorce is actually more linked to the 6th house because it's the 12th to, the 7th house. So if you look, you have Uranus here, whole sign. So that can be one indication of separation or divorce. And Pluto is hitting that right now. So the bigger issue, in my opinion, is like you guys not talking about the things that you need to talk about. There can be a sense of him feeling like he's walking around on eggshells. You know, the Pluto-Uranus transit, which you've kind of been through in this last year, is definitely about nerve-related issues, crisis, and Pluto is intercepted through your 3rd house. So it's like all of the things that you either can't talk about or you do, and it brings up some of that nervous system kind of stress. Now, you asked specifically about the Mars-Uranus conjunction, and if that was a time that I thought it would be good for you to go back home. Well, your home is more connected to Jupiter, right? That's the 4th house. So if we look at what's happening around the end of June, the moon's going into the 4th house, but it's going to oppose Mars. So it means that it's going to dramatically change something about how often he's at home, because the 10th house is connected to like, his home, which is both of yours. And then Mars conjunct Uranus makes me feel like you might assume that things are like a little, like there is a feeling of things like being a little like uneasy. I'm looking at specifically on like the 3rd and the 4th, the moon's going to go through your 7th house and it's going to square it. So he might be very emotional and very sensitive about the idea of you coming back and kind of adjusting to you being around. I would much rather see like a better aspect to Jupiter, before you decide to kind of come home. It won't take that long to see a good Jupiter transit. You're going to see Jupiter trine Pluto, and you're going to see the moon coming into a trine. So I'm kind of thinking like it would probably be better between July the 6th and right around July 14th, July 3rd is his birthday. Yeah, I mean, with Mars and Uranus conjunct, that's a solar return you're going to want to look at. But any which way you slice it, with Jupiter going into the 12th house, like there is going to be a sense of him giving you your space, not just because he's not working from home, like he's actually going to give you your space. Like you guys will possibly be in different bedrooms, or there's going to be an aspect of him kind of just like letting you be. And then Jupiter trines Pluto, so you can transform the home. Jupiter's going to trine Saturn, so you guys can kind of work through things together. But I'm going to stick to what I said. You don't really know what's going to happen until you get to the end of August. It'll be the end of August. So don't look at it as, oh, well, I'm not, going to go home unless it's going to work. I mean, if that's your mindset, I would be like, stay there a little bit longer then and figure out how you can stay in Valencia until the end of August and then decide whether or not you guys can actually come together. But we will see several trines between Jupiter and Saturn. One will be this August. You're going to see 2 others that are going to happen like late spring into summer next year. My advice is like you don't do it around the time of the Uranus Mars conjunction. So if you feel like doing it before, okay, then you need to do something like when the moon is in a trine to Jupiter, and you're going to see the Scorpio moon trining Jupiter on the 25th. So you'd be trying to travel on like the 25th or the 26th, and then you would be home for his birthday. And then obviously the 3rd is going to be, right when the moon is going to square Mars and Uranus. And I feel like even you going back and being there in time for his birthday, things are still going to feel a little weird. And from his perspective, like the moon on the ascendant, is like wanting that closeness, but Mars and Uranus, he's going to kind of feel like things are a little uncomfortable in the home front, right? So either do it the days that I gave you or do it a couple days after as you're getting closer to these transits here. So moon trine Pluto, moon trine Jupiter, the 6th, maybe even the 7th, and then you're going to have another transit here where moon and Jupiter are going to come together, trine your Saturn and trine Pluto around the 14th, okay? But keep in mind, like I said, these eclipses that are going to be coming up in relationship land, the one around August 27th is going to be, quite a big deal. And then the other one that you're going to be seeing that's going to be here, lunar eclipse on your ascendant with Mars opposing the sun. And like February of next year, there's going to be a Mercury retrograde in your 7th house. So let's say you guys do have issues in August and you go, okay, we need more time apart. Probably not going to figure out whether or not you're going to stay or go then until February of next year. And if you do decide for whatever reason to take space or separate, over the summer, it's going to really take until the beginning of next year to kind of see that, go full circle. And then a Mars retrograde, which is also going to be in Virgo. A lot of Virgo risings are going to be like, I just need some time alone to renew, to heal, for grieving. They may also feel like they need a place where they're not going to be bothered, where they can just focus on healing. I currently have the ticket booked for the 27th of June. Okay. I mean, the moon's in your 4th house. So I was kind of thinking sometime the 26th or the 27th that you would be returning home. But I mean, that's still a good transit. It's just the trines to Saturn, the trines to Venus is what I was looking for to stabilize kind of returning. But keep in mind, like I said, August and then February of next year are still going to be check-in points. Would recommend if you want like a deeper dive, you want to look at the synastry. So you want to look at the composite chart of what's going on with both of you guys to see what's happening in your composite chart to have a better understanding of what's happening and how to kind of navigate some of this stuff, right? Hopefully that's helpful. I hope that you're feeling a little bit better rested, getting some time away. Really difficult without Uranus square. A lot of Virgos are like, or Virgo risings are like, what is going on, Okay, perfect, good. So we can really break it down and we can take a look at what's going on with your guys' composite chart and some of the progressions to get an idea of which way that this is going to go. But for you, South Node going through your ascendant, it's just a lot of learning, like, oh my God, like my body's taking a beating, because of some of these relational issues. And once the North Node's out of your 7th house too, it's not going to seem so confusing. I think there's going to be more clarity about what you're doing with relationships. All right, we've got Steph and then Apple and then Rosie. You're welcome. All right, so we've got Steph that was asking questions about her son. And it looks like she said he's March 31st, 2015, 11:41 a.m. In Omaha. Let me scan ahead up here and look at this really quick. Where was that? Oh, that's right. You are using a different account. I'm like looking for you. I'm like, where is she? I'm looking for the blue. Let's see. Okay. Posted my question yesterday in case you didn't get it. Cashing in, my son has South Node transit going over his moon. Can you tell me what I should expect? Sure. So something to kind of think about is the moon is the ruler of his chart, right? He's a Cancer rising, super Cancerian, 4 degrees, Cancer rising, moon's in the 3rd, nice place to have a moon. And the South Node hitting the moon basically means that there's going to be some significant change that's going to be happening with his immediate environment. So changes in terms of his relationship to community, changes in regards to how he's getting around town. Obviously, he's rather young. He was born in, 2015. So he's like, what, like 9? So it's going to talk a little bit about, is he riding a bike around the neighborhood? Is he starting to explore a little bit more? Is there potentially going to be some changes with his home environment through his mother? So his mom kind of talking about whether or not, hey, maybe we would move. Are we going to be spending more time maybe with some of your extended relatives? So like if he has like cousins or aunts or uncles or people like that he's going to be kind of getting along with, that's good. Oh, he's 11. So she says, I want to get him a bike. So there you go. And mom is giving him something to play with, moon and Leo. The one thing that I would say with this is he needs to really, because his moon's at a 29 degree, he needs to really learn to be observing of what's around him, right? Because if he's got a Leo moon, or if he's got a Leo moon in the 3rd, he wants to go fast, right? He wants to get places, he wants to go places, and you need to make sure that he understands how to observe traffic patterns. He's potentially wearing a helmet, he knows how to signal. So there isn't anything like critical that happens while the South Node is hitting his moon. Usually with the South Node, there can be a sense of like moodiness that's kind of coming up. There can also be a sense of him being like a little bit more like reminiscent about things kind of connected to his family.
And sometimes there is not a taking away, but like not always spending as much time with mom. So he can kind of feel like mom's not always around. I'm having to kind of reach out and communicate with her in a different way. I want to get him a bike and dad's family. Okay, so maybe he's going to spend more time with dad's family. Maybe he's going to spend more time with neighbors, you know, if he's going to be out and be on a bike. So these are totally fine. He doesn't have any bad aspects. He does have Mars trine. It's an out of sign trine, but it is trining, so it is going to make him a little bit more social. And believe it or not, the third house, it calms them down when they're like going for a drive, going for a ride, going for a walk. So it's good for his mental health. And I think about like Jupiter crossing over that in this next year where, yeah, he's going to be a lot more physically active. He's going to get more sunshine. He's probably going to be happier. One other thing that I would think about is just watch anything kind of connected to, because Jupiter's going to hit that, injuries or accidents that deal with like his upper chest or his back or his shoulders. Once again, not saying anything's going to happen, but we want to make sure, because there will be a Mars retrograde that's going to be going right over his moon, where it's like, he leaves a bike out and a bike gets stolen. You need to basically be like, look, we're not going to replace it, So maybe it's also getting him a bike lock, or explaining to him that, if he just leaves it on somebody's lawn and it's not there or it's missing, then, that's going to be on him, because it's about him learning to kind of manage his possessions. You might also notice some changes that kind of happens to his communication style. Keep an eye on his reading and writing and kind of vocabulary. Make sure he's doing his homework. And you're probably going to notice there's going to be like a lot more female, either friends or family members that are going to be around him. So whether that's like he's hanging out with like the neighbors next door and there's like girls and he's starting to get kind of interested in girls, or it could mean that he's spending time with like, female cousins or like with aunties or anything like that, who's just kind of like his family and his clan. Could it be weight loss? Yes, because the moon is kind of tied to his physical body, and with the south node hitting the moon, he can definitely release something. And I think just with like him having his Jupiter return, and then Jupiter coming into close proximity with his moon, like him running around and being on a bike or during the summer, he's going to be like, oh, this is fun, but it's going to be something that's good for him in terms of like his physical health as well. My mom wants to have him over in California. So that's the other thing. It's like women who are going to be instigating him traveling. Traveling is the third house, to spend time with him. Saturn is going to be more connected to grandmothers. And so Saturn is very close to his sun. So she's kind of like, oh, I'll take care of him, over the summer. I want to see him. And over the next couple of years, Saturn is going to be coming into a trine with his moon. So him having kind of experiences with other authority figures, be that, his aunts, your mom, his dad, is actually really good. And it's going to allow him to kind of communicate with different people, establish relationships with different people. And I think also kind of just get out of his routine and keep him a little bit more active. You will just notice he's going to be a little dramatic and he's going to be a little moody. That's the only thing that you want to watch for. That's going to be pretty much the most active once the south node hits his moon. And that could be also like him going away from mom and traveling. So, you might be kind of sad that you're like, oh my gosh, like he's gone. Like, what do I do? So you're going to get kind of mopey maybe that he's not necessarily always around. So that'll be the strongest at the end of July. And then it's going to run until this is about maybe 27 degrees or so. So there will be eclipse near his moon, which might indicate travel in August. And then it looks like it's going to sit at 28, 29 degrees for quite some time. So it's not going to start to clear out until about October. So that makes sense. Kids are coming back to school in August going into September. Maybe he's missing being able to kind of like go back and forth to family's house or to be traveling, or he's going to be wanting to go out and be on his bike more. And then while Mars and Jupiter are very close to the south node and his moon, this might actually indicate that he's traveling again over like the Thanksgiving holidays or Christmas holidays, or possibly that there is going to be a move. And then Mars will actually retrograde over his moon, and Mars is his whole sign 5th house ruler. So I'm just speculating here. There's going to be a little bit of like a crush that he's going to have on probably somebody who's either friends with one of his cousins or like one of his female neighbors. So something like that is going to happen. Yeah, he's gonna have a lot of fun because Jupiter is going to be on his moon. And like his mom is tapping in, because you're the moon, to like her being like, let's do something, let's creative, like let's go somewhere, like let's go and do stuff. And like moon in the 3rd house is
maybe taking him to museums, taking him to art galleries, taking him to the movies. He's a Leo moon. He'll love that. Go and take him to see like action hero movies over the summer, or maybe taking him to like a local amusement park or something, you know, like he'll love that stuff. And I think with some of the trines to Saturn, it's going to be good because he's going to renew a lot of his relationships to authority figures. And I think that's going to be a good thing. So yeah, get him a bike for sure. Just make sure he's aware that if he is in the street, he needs to be careful. He needs to know what's going on, and also that he doesn't lose it. And you know, I think there is a possibility of either like losing or damaging a bike with the Mars retrograde. So that would come up like right around here, February, March, April. And Mars could be like gears or things that are connected to the chains, and like Jupiter could represent something that like gets broken and it needs to be fixed. So you need to make sure that you're getting him a bike that is solid, like it's not something that's damaged or worn or used. And you also probably, I wouldn't spend a ton of money getting him a bike because he's probably either going to need to replace something or something might go missing, and you're going to be like, dude, what the heck? Like come the beginning of the year. And also, don't get him a bike that's like red or yellow because it's more likely to have problems or like break down or to like, you know, like run into something. So try to get him a cooler color like silver, blue, white to get him something cooler. I had just had something I was thinking of and I just lost it. I think that's pretty much it. But keep an eye on that. Don't spend a ton of money on a bike. Get him something that's standard, you know, make sure that he can communicate and verbalize to you like, okay, a car's coming, you're at a stop sign, what do? You know, so he understands because you're going to have to communicate and go back and forth. I would put a tracker on it. Yeah, sure. You could definitely do that. Just find a little place that you can kind of put like a, one of those like little Apple AirPods. That's like a really good idea. So if it goes missing or if you can't find him, right? Because South Node, Mars, and Jupiter is going to be like mom trying to get in contact with him. And I don't know if he has a phone or not, but like, you know, it'd be a good idea for you to be able to at least see where he is around town if he's going to be out and about. Oh, and the other thing I was thinking about is Mars goes fast, Jupiter expands. So I don't like the idea of you getting him an electric bike. You know, South Node is what's kind of traditional and what's old school. So I wouldn't recommend getting him an electric bike. I think that with the trines to Saturn, it needs to be just a regular, good old-fashioned bike. Don't get him something that's going to go too fast, okay? just my 2 cents. But yeah, definitely do that. Hopefully that's helpful, and your son maybe gets a bike and he gets to go on a trip this summer because it kind of all is connected to his chart. And also the South Node moon is like mom worrying about him if he's going to be gone. But, you know, he's got Jupiter that's been on his ascendant. He's coming into his Jupiter return. I mean, just maybe watch with Jupiter being in his second house. He's going to want to consume more, but I would basically be like, dude, you know, take a water bottle instead of a Capri Sun. Like, he's going to want things that are going to be really sweet and sugary that he's going to be like wanting to drink. So whether it's sports drinks or anything like that, try to swap it out for things that are not going to be like sugar based. And I would also, you know, get him on a bike and get him moving because he won't even realize that he's working out. He's hormonal. Good luck. Hopefully he gets his bike. You're going to have to circle back and let us know. All right. Let's pull up Apple. Let's see. Where was that? Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. I'm juggling a bunch of stuff up here. Oh, let's see. I think I gotta add you in here. I'm not seeing it. April 1979. And that was at 3:02 p.m. Fairbanks. There we go. All right, now I've got you here. Virgo rising, sun in Aries, moon in Aquarius. So she says, just seeking a general reading for the current next month or so. Okay. Can do that for sure. I guess though I'm curious about how my adopted family is fitting into my little family and if my bio sister is going to remain detached or possibly try to heal our relationship. I'm never certain my adopted family or bio sister are genuinely interested in being here for my little created family. My husband and I are building a health business, homestead, and homeschooling. Okay, so family, like relatives, like, you know, cousins, siblings, is going to be more Mars through your third. And if you look at where the transits are this year, Saturn has been in conjunction to your Mars. So it has been bringing up for you a lot of shifts in your mindset in terms of how you look at said siblings, how you communicate with them, and like naturally having Saturn and Mars in conjunction, there's this feeling of having to overcome some kind of challenge in terms of those relationships. And with Mars being in Aries in your 8th, it's a lot of you going like, okay, like, am I trying enough? Like, should I be doing more? Should I be waiting for them to kind of connect with me? Honestly, I feel like between this transit, Saturn will retrograde back over your Mars, and transit Mars in opposition to Uranus. It's not really the best time for like trying to not force relationships, but like expecting anything of people, right? Like you should have seen with Uranus opposing your natal Uranus in recent years, there was this whole change up where you were learning more about your birth family. You've got the family that you were kind of like, you know, adopted family, and everything was kind of flipped on its side. And probably until Saturn leaves that conjunction with your Mars, that's when things are going to start to kind of open up in terms of how you're kind of communicating. Now, what's interesting is that Saturn has been going through Aries, and it has been coming out of a sextile with Neptune to your moon. So there's like a lot of you feeling open to the idea of going, hey, I want to totally approach relationships with my family differently. I'd like them to kind of like support my kids, right? Moon in your 5th house, my creative kind of ideas, the things that my husband and I are kind of building. And you'll probably, you know, with Saturn in your 7th and 8th house, there can be a sense of you talking to your husband a lot about your family relationships and what you're hoping to achieve and what's going to change. Talking to an astrologer is very much Saturn in your 7th house. Talking to a therapist. And I don't think until you get to this period, which is further down the line, which will be like in the fall of this year, when you have a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde, so this is going to be like October and November, where you can reevaluate, change course, reassess, reconnect, how you connect with siblings. That's when it's going to happen. Now, what's interesting is that Mars is going to be associated with the Mercury-Venus retrograde, and Mars will be in the 12th. So if you feel like people aren't making an effort come October or November, you're going to be more like out of sight, out of mind. You're going to be like, you know what? If they're not trying, if they're avoidant, if they're not trying to connect with me, you know, the show must go on. I'm going to continue to do what I'm going to do. And really, it's going to be about adjusting your mindset to how you look at family. This will be colorful because Mars is going to be squaring it. So there may be this feeling of like, okay, you know, family members who you kind of also kind of wrote off and you were like, it's not worth my time, may suddenly come in because you detach from the idea of having a relationship. So you want to be as detached from that as possible. Retrogrades can bring them back, and it can give them the opportunity to be like, hey, I've been thinking about you, like, let's reconnect. And then on the other hand, it's also going to be squaring Pluto. So it makes me feel like there's not a lot of really strong focus on integrating your relationship with them and your children until they've gone through you. Like, there's going to need to be a sense of you being like, I need to see they're trying. I need to see they're reaching out to me. I need to see that they care. And if they do, and if they make me feel valued, right? If they tell me that they want a relationship, that they miss me, that they want to talk to me, then you will open the gate and you'll go, okay, I'm going to let them have a relationship with my kids, or I'm going to let them come over and visit, or I'm going to let them kind of see the business. And unfortunately, you have to be out of sight, out of mind until these retrogrades kind of happen. And at that time, look, Saturn's going to be retrograding right over your Mars, and your Mars is at 10 degrees, which means they also have to get over their own stuff, their own hang-ups, their own issues, their own preconceived notions of who you are. And Saturn hitting your Mars is going to be in conjunct and quincunx your own Saturn. So it's also going to show you, like, some people won't approach you because they think that you're not interested or you don't care. And so what I would be doing with like Jupiter and like Mars in Leo this year is I would be sitting and meditating and kind of focusing on sending light, sending positivity, sending healing to relationships with people that you're disconnected with. And like, you know, basically be in meditation, like, okay, universe, you know, I'm sending them these positive vibes. If we're meant to kind of realign, they'll come back, and they'll come back kind of renewed and kind of transformed. And hopefully that'll work in your favor during this retrograde. There's other stuff going on though. You know, Pluto is sitting on top of your moon, so that also creates a lot of like this feeling of purging and transforming old kind of family karma, and especially your relationship to your children, and not letting like the past kind of impact you. You've got Neptune that's sitting in conjunction to your Mercury, so it's very easy for other people to kind of take things that you say out of context and get confused with, you know, what you're saying, or, you know, acting like the victim, or potentially projecting onto you. So you have to be very careful, and really, I think, work well with Saturn conjunct your Mars. That means that you don't automatically give people who you're kind of estranged from access to your kids, access to your home, communication with them, because it looks to me like you're really trying to focus on creating a lot of stability. And there's the family that you're born into, and then there's the family that you make. The family you're born into is very much your fourth house, where you have Neptune natally. And that means that there can be a sense of there being, you know, family members that have mental health issues, they have addiction issues, there's secrets, they can be kind of crazed, especially because it squares your north and south node and your Venus. And then there's the family that you make. And your seventh house is that. So Venus, Mercury, and Mars there, it means that your husband and you create a family together. That's Venus. Maybe it means that you're going to be taking on people who are going to feel like soul family, and they're kind of like aunts and uncles to your kids, and they're almost like siblings to you in a way. And then Mars is going to represent that you're going to be very cautious about letting people in until they've changed something about the way that they kind of communicate. She said it's been years of hoping and praying things are positive, just haven't done anything to show that. Yeah, and like to some extent, you know, I'm all about, like, I believe that we're here to supersede our astrology. But when I see somebody who's got this many aspects that indicate that there's like an issue ancestrally, okay, so that's through, you know, Neptune being in your fourth, Neptune square the nodes, where there can be this feeling of like, okay, where is my family? Or like, did they desert me? And then your ancestors, or your 12th house, so you have Saturn there and the North Node, all ruled by Mercury. Like, I feel like you've probably had your fair share of trying to talk to them about the misunderstandings and like the miscommunication, and like they become hostile, or they get angry, or they'll just kind of cut off the communication. And like, I don't think that works for you, because when you experience some of that, you will take that on through the quincunx and the in conjunction. Like, you don't want to be somebody who is, you know, like kind of like brash and like, you know, argumentative and confrontational. Like, you've got a lot of Aries in your chart, so you can be those things, but I think you're learning to transmute it. And instead of like taking it personally, or like fighting fire with fire, you're learning to just basically call a spade and be like, you know what, if that's how you want to be, that's your life. I don't have to, you know, take offense to it, but I also don't have to participate in it. It's just work, which is great, but praying my children get an experience in extended family. Well, knowing that you have your moon in Aquarius, I'm just going to tell you right now, it means that your children were going to have a very unconventional upbringing. And that's not bad. That means they have a mom that's future thinking, abstract, has humanitarian goals, wants to talk about creating, you know, like a soul family, or doing things that are more kind of communally. So, you know, you'll have children that are your own children, and then you're going to have children that are going to be like your extended kids, where it could be, you know, your nieces, your nephews, your friends' kids. Like, you know, you're really redefining what it means to kind of be a mom, I think, through this Pluto transit. So will the kids get it? Go and look at your kids' charts. Go and look at their 11th house and what's going on with transits through their 11th house, or their 11th house ruler. I'll tell you, you know, friends of your children is always your 11th house. So knowing that you're about to have your Jupiter return, and Jupiter is going to go into your 11th house, tells me that, yes, you can make more friends this year. You can extend your community this year. Your kids can make friends, but it's going to oppose Pluto on your moon, which means they're going to meet people. And these kids are probably going to either be, I don't know, through community, through sports, could be through school if they go to traditional kind of education. And they're going to be like, with Jupiter in opposition to Pluto and your moon, they're going to be like, you guys are different, huh? Like, you guys are like homeschooled, or, you know, you guys do like weird things at home, or you guys like build, you know, like things for a community. So there is going to be a sense of other people not understanding them right off the bat, but I think that you're going to help build community with and for your kids, with Jupiter and eventually the South Node and Mars kind of going into the 11th house. So try to stay optimistic. Wait until you get to October, November. That's when you're going to see the bigger kind of changes that are going to happen in regards to communication with your siblings and your extended family. Hopefully that's helpful. All right. We have got Rosie and then Amanda. And that's what I have for the level 4 memberships. I don't think I missed anybody, but if I did, let me know. All right, and then Rosie, I believe this is you. Let's see. I'm with my sister who had a procedure today. I can't stay. She's been in accidents and rebuilding since November of 24. Her DOB is February 14th. Oh, you want me to look at her? Okay. And let's see, did she send any other messages? No. Okay, so we're going to look at her. Cue me up. My sister had surgery. Okay. What do I know about this season and her chances at recovery? So I'm going to look at her information because it's easier for me to do that. But because I have your chart up, you know, the North Node's conjunct your Venus in the whole sign third. And it's at 0 degrees. So sister dealing with hospitalization, Pisces, needing to heal, needing relationships. And with the North Node on Venus, it's like, I have to be there for my sister, like right now, right? So this is a very specific kind of timely event. And Uranus is squaring that and has been. So it also means that it's kind of upending your schedule, your routine, because you're like all hands on deck with my sister. And Saturn's in your 4th house too, as well. So let's take a look at her chart. Let's see what's going on. And that was February 14th, 1980. And that was at 5:30 a.m. In New Brunswick, New Jersey. All right, so she's got a Capricorn rising, Capricorn moon. Her sun's in Aquarius. And you said that she had a procedure today and you can't stay. Okay. So let me scroll back down and let's look at today. So she has currently got Saturn, which is her ruler, in the whole sign 4th. Technically it's in the 2nd. So Saturn and Neptune have been hitting her Venus. So that's a big deal because it's about kind of bringing in really prominent women in the family to kind of be there and help her. And with Neptune hitting her Venus in the 2nd house, like the physical disposition of the body can have issues. Like there can be head-related issues, head wounds, problems with like blood flow, iron, all of that stuff. She has Moon and Mars that were meeting today. That were in a trine to her ascendant and also to her natal Saturn. So not my favorite aspect for surgery, but I mean, I got to tell you, waning moon is going to be better healing, you know, less bruising, less kind of recuperation time. So this is always the best time to do surgery if things match in the chart, which they do. So good timing. Jupiter and Venus represents the support that she's getting from other people. The problem that I think is going on, because you said she's been having issues since 2024, the problem is that there is an eclipse that we had in February that was very close to her sun and her south node. And if you notice in her chart, usually Leo is the 8th house, which deals with like surgery, change, and transformation, but it's intercepted. So I don't know if her health issues really started peaking up around the time of this eclipse, right after her birthday. And that eclipse was squaring Uranus, which was going to be bringing up some pretty dramatic changes with her living situation, her family. And that eclipse is still rolling. So we're still feeling the effects of that for another probably at least 6 months or so. And then as a Capricorn rising, she's about to have the Mercury retrograde that is going to be moving from her descendant, and that's relationship with family, into her 6th. So she's going to need assistance and she's going to need care, especially with like health and habits or things around the house or like with pets. And Mercury can be siblings. So it's about siblings kind of helping her kind of like regroup. And that could be going on really until the latter part of July. But, you know, whether you're a Capricorn rising or an Aquarius rising, this Mercury retrograde is about going and like clearing up health problems. The only thing that I think is challenging is that before we get into this period, just recently she had Mercury square Saturn. So it was like, oh, there's a health issue. I need to, you know, have my family to help me kind of deal with some of these health issues. And like, yeah, it's reassessing her day to day. It's reassessing her habits. But it looks like she's got family coming in to kind of help her deal with some of this stuff. The South Node has also been dancing on all of her Virgo placements. And it is very, very close to her natal North Node. So she's getting ready to have a reverse nodal return, which is interesting. You know, usually the North Node in the 7th is a lot of relationship challenges. But all of this being in Virgo and being retrograde, it means when she has a change in direction with her health, suddenly there's like a reset that happens with her relationship karma. And she could bring, you know, a partner that could come in after this, or she's suddenly building relationship that she has, you know, with family or with, you know, partners. And the North Node's coming up on her Sun, which indicates that she's just going through a really profound period this year of just personal transformation. I don't know if she's going to need more surgical procedures. I'm just putting that out there. I think that I would be keeping an eye on the eclipse that's going to happen in mid-August, because that might suggest or kind of talk about whether or not she's fully healed from, you know, her surgery, if she's needing to go and have another surgery, or if there's talk about removing something or making a change. And that eclipse, which is going to happen at 20 degrees on the 12th, is the same degree that Mars will go retrograde through, right? So it's like maybe she's having a procedure done, and they're like, we're just going to kind of play it by ear and see what happens. Down the road, when Mars hits that degree, you got to kind of keep an eye on from about mid-October through about mid-November if there is another surgical intervention that has to happen. Now, I don't say that lightly. I'm saying that because I can see it in several different ways. One is Mars and Jupiter is going to be in her whole sign 8th house, which is surgical. It's going to meet the South Node where she's going to have to go back and maybe correct something. The North Node is going to be on her Sun, which is generally a period of a lot of vitality, but it's also highlighting the 8th house. And then Mars will go retrograde. So if nothing happens in the fall, we need to keep an eye out for her, because Mars is going to retrograde exactly on her natal Mars at 9 degrees. Like, I'm not crazy about the idea of her hopping on flights or going on international travel. Like, she's got to kind of play it, you know, kind of like cool, pretty much December through April, because there's the possibility if she's trying to do too much too soon, she's looking at February, you know, having to go back in and make some changes to her health. Why? You know, now we've got eclipses in her 8th house and we've got a Mercury retrograde. So she's not quite out of the woods yet. She will, I assume, be doing better health-wise as you're getting into April. But her following up with, you know, her medical practitioners, making sure that they're giving her the best care, they're giving her insight. They're most likely going to be a little conservative with some of her health-related stuff. And it'll be nice to see her start to bounce back in August, I think, with Jupiter in her 7th house trining Saturn. This is really about just a positive support and relationship she has with a sibling. But yeah, it's going to take until about next spring for her to really start to kind of see her way out of this. Really interesting aspect she has. Sun conjunct the South Node, North Node conjunct Jupiter and Mars. I mean, that can be a life where she has a number of like health issues. And I think you said this has been going on since November of 2024. When Pluto was on her moon. So that started the health stuff. And then she also had the North Node on her Venus, which is not necessarily negative. Jupiter, which was in her whole sign 6th house of health, but it was in opposition to Neptune. So some of this stuff started happening, but I kind of feel like either some stuff got overlooked, or it was not fully diagnosed, or maybe there was an accident and now she's kind of dealing with it. But yeah, as of right now, I would say, you know, just about the next like 3 or 4 weeks or so, just some adjustments and having support with, you know, 6th house can be hygiene, organization, taking care of pets. And it does look like, according to your chart, you're supposed to be with her right now. So just bear through, sending you lots of good vibes. Hope that your sister continues to heal and does well, and definitely give me some feedback and let me know what happens. All right, we've got Amanda. Let me pull her up here. Where was she? Here we go. I think it was this one, if I remember correctly. Let's see, Amanda. I saw her kind of bop in there. 1 to 85. Yeah. Okay, so Virgo rising, sun in Capricorn, moon in Taurus. Let me know what's in store for the next few months. Is that Cancer, sun, Sag rising coming back during Mercury retrograde? What do I need to know? All right, well, let's take a look. So Mercury is more so connected in your chart to your career and you, okay? So the Mercury retrograde in Cancer doesn't necessarily mean that he's coming back to you, although he's a Sag rising and Mercury rules his 7th. So there can be a sense of debating whether or not he wants to reconnect with someone if he has like a relationship change. For you, I would say, Mercury retrograding away from Jupiter is more about you proceeding forward and not thinking so much or putting so much focus or emphasis on relationships, right? Because you're like, nope, not going into the direction of Mercury, focusing more on, where I'm going to be going with, well, friends, career. It is in your 10th house. Mercury transits in Cancer, or just any transits in Cancer, can be a little bit more difficult for you because you have it intercepted. So when you have intercepted Cancer and Capricorn in your 4th and in your 10th house, it means that sometimes there's blind spots in regards to what is my status, what is my career, what is my purpose, how do I feel about what I'm doing, and where is home, where is my safe zone, where is my security. And it's like very Capricorn and Cancer is like very kind of like gender roles, mother, kind of father related things. And I think that I would really watch this Mercury retrograde. You're going to have to see which one resonates more. You're going to hear for Virgo risings, the Mercury retrograde is like a reevaluation of your goals, reconnections with friends. You might break off certain friendships. There can also be a sense of you getting wind, because this is the lovers of other people, that somebody is actually having some issues in a relationship, and like you put the pieces together on social media and you're like, ooh, I think they broke up, right? But Mercury is squaring Saturn, so it doesn't mean that you want to take them back or that you want to open that door, but like there can be some clues as to whether or not people that you have been involved with are coming out of relationships. But once again, the entire retrograde is going to be in your 10th Placidus. So this is more happening at work, things changing with your work schedule, maybe taking time off of work to rest and recuperate, to travel. Could also mean there's changes going on with like your schedule, superiors at work, managers. And I would watch, or look back what's happened the last couple of days. Where have you been feeling like you're not in control of your relationships, right? Mercury square Saturn, where you're like, well, what am I supposed to be doing, if I don't have a relationship right now? And I've said to like a lot of my late Virgo risings, early Libra risings, take this seriously. If there's something that feels disjointed, or if you feel like you no longer want to work for a company, or you can no longer stay in a relationship dynamic, or something is just not gelling, then you want to use the retrograde to be like, okay, I can get out of it. And so this is where it kind of is more like a Libra rising, where Mercury retrograde might mean that there are some things that you've been thinking about behind the scenes, kind of changing about your career, your work status, your professional kind of goals. And you may realize that some of the people that you're kind of hanging around, right, aren't going to make the cut. Like they're not going to be able to help you evolve the way that you want to, professionally. You may also feel like it's been all work and no play, and that there's just been so much going on with your career that there has been this lack of feeling where you have the opportunity to, get into a relationship or commit to somebody or kind of fall in love. And so a lot of it can be, hey, do I need to kind of like reassess, where I'm at professionally and make more time for dating? Relationships with superiors can also be tested here. So keep that in mind. That's definitely going to be a big one. And now that Mercury is the dispositor of Uranus in Gemini, this means that we have to keep an eye on what's going on with Gemini, right? So Mars and Uranus will be meeting in early July. To me, this reads as if like somehow, some way, you might be asked to step away from work unexpectedly and have to travel. It could also mean that you could be connecting to somebody or you meet somebody while they're traveling, right? Mars and Uranus. Maybe you're thinking about doing some traveling or some higher education, some certification, some training, and there could be some unexpected changes at work just from the perspective of like a Virgo rising. So things can get kind of crazy work-wise. Be mindful of that. I would also say just as a Capricorn, you know, having these retrogrades that are going to be in opposition to your Sun and your Jupiter, you're going to feel like there is a major reevaluation of relationships. But I think it's more about the people that you've been involved with kind of reminiscing and reevaluating, and like certain situations might be coming to an end for them, and it's pushing them to really think about whether or not they want to connect. But you're likely not going to hear, if you're going to hear from somebody at all from the past, until like Mercury's coming into conjunction with Jupiter, right? So it's going to go retrograde, it's going to come back, it's going to conjunct Jupiter. And that would probably be closer to mid-August because it's going to trine Saturn. But I really want to reiterate that this is not about relationships right now. Okay, you might see something pop up in later August when you have like the Pisces eclipse. A lot of my late Virgo risings, early Libra risings are telling me, hey, Saturn's in my 7th house. It sucks. Like I either, you know, don't want a relationship anymore, or I'm getting divorced, or, you know, they're not fulfilling me. And you're supposed to lean into Jupiter moving through the 11th, where it's like, okay, you can make new friends, you join community, you're out and about, you're doing things. People might also try to play matchmaker for you this summer, or they're going to be like friends that are going to want to be more than friends. Or maybe you're just getting to know somebody platonically, and then you're like, hey, I think we have a connection. And right around August, when Saturn and Jupiter start trining, that's when you're going to see like better relationship opportunities. But there is a possibility in August when Jupiter and Mercury come together, because this is your whole sign 12th house, that you're kind of hearing from somebody from the past. But it doesn't really have that energy that's like, oh, it's going to equate to you being together. Like, I'm not seeing that. We're done with having Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. The last thing we need to get out of Pisces now is the North Node. So you'll see as soon as that North Node goes into Aquarius and it's in your 5th house, so this is going to be right around the end of July, it begins coming into conjunction with Venus, which is like a really strong period for you when it comes to, you know, having good things happening at work. Maybe it's going to be stronger kind of health themes that are coming up for you. Maybe it's going to mean that you're beautifying your office space, but it also is likely going to materialize as like a really potentially prominent person coming into your life who you can fall in love with. And that'll be kind of the end of July, you know, August, and then that's going to start to kind of separate once it hits about 25, 26 degrees. So it'll run all the way until the fall. So I think just the North Node getting out of Pisces is finally going to start making things feel a little bit more clear. Certainly, you know, Neptune can distort relationships still this year. Saturn can also be kind of creating a little bit of a delay. And these planets are squaring your natal Neptune, your natal Sun, and Jupiter. And I just think that what you want is somebody who is self-aware. I think with Saturn, Neptune in your 7th, but somebody who's a go-getter, somebody who's a little bit more action-oriented, somebody who's going to be a little bit more masculine in a way where they're going to pursue you. And I think that you'll like some of the trines to, you know, Jupiter and also Mars that you'll see between now and the fall. That's really going to bring you the opportunity to kind of connect with somebody in a way that feels like inspiring and creative, and it feels fun. But like, I wouldn't be waiting for someone to return. I feel like the whole point of having Saturn and Neptune now on a new sign is saying, no, we're moving on to new relationship potential. If people don't see the role that they played in some of the relationship dysfunction, you have no other choice but to kind of leave them behind. But don't sleep on the Mercury retrograde. Pay attention also to the first 7 days of July when Mars and Uranus come into conjunction, because it's going to be in an angular house whole sign for you. I think it's going to materialize more as sudden travel, but I got to just put that disclaimer out there. You know, anything can go with work. There can be a significant either work or relationship change from about July, I would say the 2nd, all the way through the 11th. That's when you're going to see it is in full effect. And I don't know if it's going to be something changes with work and you have to travel, or maybe you're taking time off. If you have like PTO, definitely consider taking it in early July. Maybe going on a road trip, and if not, watch for some of the changes that's going to happen like in your professional space. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Amanda. All right, we've got Mural, Hassini, and Danielle. You guys are the ones that are next on my list. I sign into my PayPal and get this going. All right, so morale. Okay, and I believe this was a synastry question, and if I hope she sees this because she came in last week and wanted synastry during tarot and sent me an email, and I was like, no, this is tarot, this isn't astrology. So hopefully you see this, Meryl. And then let me open the other person. Okay, here we go. So I have got her here January 8th, 1996 at 11:50 p.m. in Long Beach. Your now ex is January 7th, 1992 around 10 a.m. in Brooklyn. Okay, so just to give you guys a little bit of the backstory, she sent me an email and she said, my now ex-boyfriend, after 3.5 years out of the blue, broke up with me via text on 5/30/2026. So that wasn't too long ago. And she said it happened around 7 p.m. Pacific time. So that's around 9 a.m. my time, or 9 p.m. my time. Right? Yeah, p.m. Okay. And she said, I just had to come back. I just had come back from a 2-week work trip. I cussed him out and blocked him mid-conversation. Should I expect him back or move on? All right. Well, right around the time this happened, I was just looking at the ascendant earlier. Hold on a second. That's not right. So it was May 26th. I think you said, right? May 30th, 2026. And this was right around 7, you said PST, so I don't know. So that's going to be 9 my time. I don't know what city this was in, but I'm just adjusting the time zone. So the ascendant at that time looks like it was right around Sag rising, and this was the full moon. So you had the moon that was in opposition to the sun. Okay, so it was representing bing, that kind of separation. All right, so let's add this to your chart. So you had a full moon that was taking place in Sagittarius, which was more your second house. It was picking up the energies of the third house. So this is like how you communicate, what you're learning, you know, how you're traveling, and you're like, I had just gotten back from travel. Makes perfect sense. This was ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter was right at the top of your chart. So you were traveling for work, right? Venus was up there, so there was like a lot of positive things happening with your career. But the problem is that you had Saturn that was starting to come into conjunction with your descendant, which you're seeing now. You're going to see that actually over the next couple weeks, which does sometimes create that boundary. And, you know, 12 is where things dissolve. So like a relationship dissolving. Mars is the ruler of your relationships. And it looks like Mars in Taurus was coming into a square with your natal Mercury, Mars, and also Pluto. So there was like this emotional outburst that might have potentially come up about an ending of a relationship where like both things cannot kind of continue. And then things come to a pop when you see like a full moon. I mean, that's just kind of like my interpretation. Inevitably, at some point between Pluto hitting your Mars and Saturn hitting your 7th house, I kind of feel like there was going to be some kind of an ending of a relationship. Like that was going to happen. Because both Mars is getting hit both ways. Saturn is going to be, you know, coming into a semi-square, and then you also have Pluto coming into conjunction with it. So then we have, let's add another chart here. So then this is him. So let's swap 2 and 3. Okay. This is him. So he's a Pisces rising, and he's got his sun in Capricorn and his moon in Aquarius. All right. And the South Node's been swinging through his 7th house. So this talks a lot about potential changes with relationships. There's been eclipses there. It's ruled by Mercury. And when you had the full moon-ish, let's go back right around here. There we go. This was talking about the pressure that was coming up for him because the full moon was squaring his ascendant and his descendant, where it was bringing up, oh, do I need to grow, evolve, or, you know, kind of like take a hold of the situation and create change? The moon rules his romantic partnerships, and it was squaring his 7th house. Ouch. And the moon, the full moon was very close to his Venus. So that could bringing about some kind of like dramatic ending to a relationship. Uranus is opposing that. And because he's got Mercury conjunct Mars, usually this is somebody who will like fight back in relationships, or they fight for relationships, or they want a lot of like public connection to relationships. And then to top it all off, he's getting ready to see Mercury go retrograde in his 5th. So here we are, June the 12th. Mercury's been sitting on the South Node, so it means that you are asking about him, or you're inquiring about him. And it's whether or not you're going to go back to him. So just looking at his chart, you're more likely to reach back out to him because Mercury is going to retrograde away from Jupiter. So it means that I'd keep an eye out on like June 16th through like the 20th. Like you might feel like you want to cave and reconnect, or you could hear from him. I'm sure that's possible. And then you're going to see Mercury retrograde, where it's going to retrograde in conjunct the Sun. And that tells me that unless there's some kind of connection by about mid-July, this is more him going, I need to heal myself. I need to reassess whether or not I want to date. I need to work on healthier kind of dating and habits. It can mean that he realizes, hey, I really have feelings for her. You know, I want to reconnect with her. But because Mercury is moving away from Jupiter, it's more likely going to be you connecting with him. Now, Saturn's also squaring his South Node in the house of dating and the North Node in the house that deals with friends. And there can be like this sense of him feeling like he's at a crossroads with what he wants out of life. It's like, do I want to date, or do I want to, you know, kind of be alone? And that can be part of what's going on. I feel like inevitably there is going to be issues with this chart because down the road, you're going to see a Pisces eclipse here, which will oppose the Sun and Mercury in the 7th. So even if you guys try to make amends, like he's still going to have this feeling of being like, no, I don't want to be kind of tied down with a relationship. No, you know, it's going to be kind of bogging me down. And he's going to want his own thing. Like, I think it's just about him either having more time for himself, his hobbies, or potentially kind of like finding joy and not feeling like he has to go out and entertain people. So there would be definitely some stuff that would have come up in August if you guys do reconnect. And then in the beginning of next year, Mars is going to retrograde over his descendant. And that would be a time that's like, if he wants to go back to somebody, if he wants to get back into dating, if he wants to return to you, that would be more him coming back to you. And that's going to be pretty much from the beginning of January. It'll retrograde right over his 7th house cusp at an 8. And it's activating Saturn. So it's going to be him being like, well, do I want to go back? Like, this is a guy who literally could put you on back burner and like not talk to you for like 6 months and then be like, hey, I want to come back. Like, what doesn't kill you calls you in 6 months, you know? Looking at some of his transits, I'm not crazy about Pluto hitting his Saturn. I mean, that tells me that, you know, he could be having some bad habits behind the scenes and he could be influenced by friends or work colleagues. He doesn't communicate very well, right? Because he's got Mercury debilitated and it's conjunct Mars. Like, he'll kind of fight to kind of get his way. And it looks to me like with Saturn and the moon in the 12th house, he's very reflective, but it's like he isolates himself. So rather than giving you the opportunity to talk about what the relational issue was, it was just kind of like he abruptly ended it and then wanted to retreat. Like, literally, this is probably somebody who's more likely to come back at the beginning of next year and be like, hey, can we talk about it? And I would be like, fuck no. Like, if he doesn't try to talk to you about it during this Mercury retrograde period in the next month, ice him. Ice him. And I'm just saying that to protect you. Not so much because I'm being critical of him. All right. So together, you know, and this is a huge issue for Libra risings. I mean, huge issue. I feel like Saturn going through the 7th house, I understand that you're going to have tests in relationships 100%. And like Saturn's going to be bringing up for a lot of like Libra risings, like, oh, my dad used to do this to me. My mom used to do this to me. Or like, you know, kind of like childhood wounds, which is very, I mean, that's a big deal for you. You got a loaded 4th house. But Saturn doesn't perform well in Aries. So it's almost like there's a lot of issues with partners that They want to lead, but they don't know how. They want to be respected, but they're not giving respect. They want to be taken seriously, but they're acting like clowns. And then you have Neptune in the mix, which is bringing up issues where there's distortion. Sometimes what you're doing, he's doing to you, and vice versa. Sometimes there's a sense of antagonizing each other. And then there could be people who are just straight up keeping secrets, and they're kind of like hiding things from you, or then they just like kind of vanish, right? So like Saturn and Neptune, they conjuncted in in February, and it was going to be bringing up from that point on that you might have somebody just dramatically kind of leave your life. And it's things where they're hiding out, Neptune, from you. Okay, so the real thing that I want to look at is the composite, because you can look at the synastry. The synastry is not really going to tell you what's going to happen. The composite's going to tell you what's going to happen. So you guys are Sag rising, Sun in Capricorn. Oh my God, look at all that Capricorn. I mean, just looking at this chart with all these planets in the first house, you guys were meant to come together to learn how to be better individuals. And I think that's what relationships really are, especially the ones that don't work out. But Sun, Neptune, Uranus all being in the first house, there's this sense of both parties maybe not wanting to change, not wanting to be told what to do, that kind of stuff. Mars will retrograde over your Chiron in early next year, so I wonder if that's going to bring some kind of opportunities for healing and getting clarity. But this is a chart that's ruled by Jupiter. Okay, so Uranus is on your south node, kind of picking up what I was seeing. There was some unhealthy habits going on, be that in the relationship or things that were being hidden. That comes through the composite chart. And then Jupiter is the ruler, and it's in Scorpio. So here's the other thing, and I know these are things you might not want to hear, but I think about in October, so yes, that Mercury retrogrades in your 7th house. Could there be a reconnection? Sure, but I would give it till the end of July, and then I wouldn't try. Because Mercury is going to square Saturn, so that means you guys are both trying to move on in September. And this is the period of time that interests me the most. The end of September into like October and November. Venus is going to retrograde over your Jupiter, okay? So it's going to be about whether or not, he comes out of hiding, or he tries to add you on a social, or he tries to contact you on another app, maybe. But the 11th house is lovers of other people. So I'm also wondering, like, if you don't talk and you guys are done, if there's a situation where you end up meeting somebody else and you end up dating somebody else, and there's like a hard launch of somebody that you're dating and he sees it and he tries to come back. I also wonder if he's dating somebody else and you see it, and then you're looking at like the timeline of the events and you're like, wait a second, when did they meet each other? Like, you might see a post where some girl's like, oh, we've been together for 8 months, and you're like doing the math and you're like, what? Something like that could be revealed, because this is in the whole sign 12th house. That retrograde will be with Venus and Mercury, so it's exposing relationship secrets, and it's going to square Pluto, so it's going to be bringing up somebody being like, oh my God, like, I've changed, or I've moved past it now. And it's also going to be squaring Mars. And then the other time period that I was looking is when Mars retrogrades over your Chiron. So it's going to be like right here in January. And Uranus is still on your south node. So I really feel like even if you guys were to reconnect, there's not a lot of stability in this chart, between now and the beginning of next year. You can overcome some of that stuff, but I kind of feel inclined to tell you, after 3.5 years with somebody, if they're just going to up and vanish, that is your Saturn-Neptune lesson. And you have to ask yourself, because it's squaring your natal Saturn and your natal Neptune and opposing your south node, is this reminding you of like where a parent abandoned you? It could be a mother figure, 4th house, it could be a father figure, the Sun, Neptune. And like abandonment wounds are a real thing for you. And I would not take this lightly, because you need somebody who's going to be reliable. And my money is on, you either finding out some kind of truth connected to this, or that there is going to be something that's going to be popping up next year once Saturn is coming closer into conjunction with your south node, where it's like, okay, the karma starts to clear and then relationships may stabilize. That's going to be like April, May of 2027. I don't think the composite chart's that easy. I feel like there's a lot of you guys kind of growing and evolving, and you get to a point where you're like, maybe we're outgrowing each other. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of food for thought. I'm sorry to hear you're going through that. That's a bummer with Saturn in opposition to your Chiron, ouch, and the square to your Sun. But good summer to have lots of social connections and have good friends around you, because it's going to help you kind of navigate away from some of those Saturn-Neptune issues that you have in your 7th. All right, we have got Hassini, Danielle, and Sahad. So let's see. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. I don't think she was here, but hopefully she finds it. All right, so we've got Hassini here. I'm going to switch to my PayPal questions. All right. Hey, Donica, just so you know, now that I see you here, let me go back. Give me 1 second. I'm seeing a lot of people that sent payments after things went through. Did I say April, Amanda, and Jacqueline? I think I did. Donica, while I have you, your question to me was for Sinistry, and Sinistry is $75. And you sent me your info, got it. You sent me your son's info, and then you said how transits are affecting me 2026 into early 2027, okay? And you said best ways to create money and launch times. So that's one question. Then you said, should I work with my son? And here's our Sinistry. He's consulting in tech, and I am in publishing. So that's two things. If you want Sinistry, I can talk about what it looks like with you and your son, or if you want transits, I can talk about your transits, but it has to be one or the other unless you want to pay for a separate reading, okay? So just let me know what you want me to do so I know what to look at. All right, so we've got Hassini, September 23rd, 1996 is what I'm assuming because I had your chart on file. And you said, hey girl, please tell me when I will meet my future husband before I hit 30. I have been meeting a lot of hot guys at work. I feel like I have a new crush every day. It's been fun. How do I attract my future husband? Give me some insight, please. All right, so let's talk about your chart. Part of this is just as like a Sag rising, you know, you have Uranus going into Gemini. So I'll give some whole sign astrologers a little bit of credit. You know, Uranus going in the 7th house is like, oh, I'm meeting somebody here and I'm meeting somebody there and somebody here. But Uranus is technically in your 6th. So you're meeting people at work. That's a great example of Uranus picking up the energy of your 7th house, but it's going through your 6th, which is your workplace, the gym, the doctor's office, you know, where you're going and kind of focusing on health and productivity. Your 7th house ruler is Mercury, and it's retrograde in your 9th at a 19. So that tells me that you are going to meet them in some karmic way where you either make a job change because Mercury's in a sign that deals with work. Maybe you're debating whether or not you're going to make a job change. Maybe you're debating whether or not you're going to apply for a new job. It can also be somebody who leaves your job and then they return. And I would be looking for people who are like Virgos, Libras, or Sagittariuses. Those are like the big 3 signs that I'd be looking for. You could also meet them if you're doing some training or if you're like going back to school for something or if you're traveling. Like let's say you're taking time away from work, right? Mercury retrograde, and you decide, I'm going to go on a trip. I'm going to get out of town. You know, look cute when you go to the airport, right? Because it could mean that you meet somebody while you're at a place that deals with travelers. Now, with that being said, there's not really a lot of aspects to your natal Mercury. Mercury is not aspecting really anything. The only kind of slight aspect it's making, and it's wide, is an 11-degree trine to Jupiter, and you're Jupiter. So once again, it's saying the same thing. If you're traveling, Jupiter for work, Capricorn, or if you're expanding something about your beliefs with your career, your job, or your professional kind of like insights, it will likely lead to you meeting someone. So some people would look at this from a whole sign perspective and be like, yeah, you know, somebody might be into you, you're into them, you're like, ooh, we work together, that's weird, and then like one of you guys leaves the office and then you start dating. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. But you know you're a Libra. So you're going through this year, your Saturn's return, which is technically done, but it's not really going to be done until next year when Saturn's at least 10 degrees away from your natal Saturn. And Saturn has been in opposition to the sun. So that's like husbands, father figures, anything connected to like, you know, like leadership, masculine energies. And Neptune is also in on opposition to your sun. So like a lot of my Libra placements, you know, sun and rising, they're all telling me like, I'm longing for relationship. I can't find anybody. Nothing is there. I can't see anything coming. And you're like, help me. And I would say until Neptune and Saturn are out of this opposition with your sun and also the South node, that's when you're probably going to see something that's going to kind of kick up. And you also need to see a pretty significant transit to your natal Mercury. Now, this year, in September, you're going to be turning 30. So when you're asking me like, oh, is it going to happen before I'm 30? No, it's not, because you're not in your 7th house year yet. So your birthday starts over around the end of September. And then from September of 26 to September of 27, you have to watch when planets go through Gemini. You have to watch when there's transits to your natal Mercury, and you have to watch when there's Mercury retrogrades. Those are going to be the periods that are going to show you what's going to happen. But from a whole sign perspective, right, you have in your 10th house just Mercury. So that means that you have to reevaluate or reassess, where am I working and do I want a relationship? That's it. All right, cool. So let's go according to the transits. Could you see some action happening with a Mercury retrograde in your 7th and Mars going through there in July or August? Maybe, but I don't think anything major is going to come of it. My guess is that you're more likely to see more love stuff when Jupiter hits your Venus, where there could definitely be some opportunities for connection and romance in September. And then we're going to be watching Mercury transits, okay? So look at this. Let's go to your birthday. And Mercury is going to be in Libra. It's coming out of an opposition with Saturn. Now, Mercury will retrograde with Venus. So there could be like an admirer of sorts that's trying to connect with you in October. There could also be a sense of like somebody who's friends and maybe becoming more. And then my guess is that when Mars and Venus meet, it's going to be stronger in late October, early November. And then you're going to see the Mercury retrograde kind of continue to do its thing. That one's not the easiest for dating in November. And then when Mercury comes into conjunction with Jupiter, and it looks like there's going to be a Cazimi right around your Jupiter, pay attention to what's happening in December of this year. That might be an opportunity for you to meet somebody to like, let's say like Christmas to like New Year's. And then when Mercury goes retrograde, which is going to be in Pisces, that could mean you're hearing from somebody from the past, or relationships might be impacting where you're living. That's going to be in February. But what I'm really waiting for is when planets get into your 7th house. So when Mercury, Uranus, the Sun, Venus, you know, kind of like May, June of next year, that's going to be a big relationship time. Look, Mercury will retrograde there in June. When Mars comes into conjunction with Mercury, you might be talking about relocating or traveling for a partnership. And then the big one is going to be when Jupiter hits your Mercury, because that's like a once in a 12-year cycle. Now that'll be after your birthday, by the way, but you may very well meet that person this year. And then things are really going to progress right around October of next year, which is kind of interesting, because then you go into your 8th house here, and that's going to be more about the moon. And the moon is on your whole sign 3rd in Aquarius at a 7. The North Node's going to hit that, and Pluto's going to be there. It means somebody's going to be asking you to potentially move or relocate for them, right? So like that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. So relationship stuff will probably pretty significantly peak up, especially I would say like March, April, May of next year. And then you got to watch what happens in the summer. But by the time you're getting to your birthday, it looks like you might be contemplating moving or changing where you're living to be with a partner. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful in giving you those insights. But don't make it limited to 30, right? Don't look at it as like, I have to meet this person before I'm 30. Because having your natal 7th house ruler retrograde means that you don't want to choose the wrong person. Because there could be a sense of you getting married because you're in your head about it, or because of what society thinks, or you might potentially regret the person that you choose, or there could be 2 marriages because it is in a double-bodied sign. So make sure it's the right person. Don't put so much pressure on you to figure out, you know, that it has to be like now. But the 7th house year generally does produce a huge change in terms of how you look at your status, right? I just got this job. So that's the thing. Even with changes to your work, like if you just change jobs, that's going to enhance your relationships. But the best of the best is going to be next fall. Like I could see with Jupiter hitting your Mercury at a 19, it's like you get engaged or you're talking about getting married, right? I mean, it is going to be trining, you know, your natal placements in Capricorn. So that's good. But until Neptune's out of an opposition with your Sun and away from your Saturn, it is going to try to get you to move. I almost wonder if you're going to meet somebody who's like culturally different or diverse in some way, or they're from another country, or they're thinking about relocating. Like something like that can kind of pop up. All right, we have got Danielle, and then Sahad, and then Rachel. So let's see, what's up, Miss Danielle? Let's see, where is she? There we go. All right, Danielle says, so she's a Cancer rising. Her sun is in Taurus. Her moon is in Aries. And she says, I was so curious for the Jupiter-Venus conjunction on 6/9, but it was an average day, honestly. Any insights for Venus in Leo and the new moon this weekend in particular for love? Heard that from a lot of people. And I think a lot of it's also just, I mean, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, you know, happened as we were kind of going through a waning moon. And Mercury was also square Saturn, so it wasn't like the most positive kind of experiences. And the Venus-Jupiter conjunction is right around the path of where we're going to see the Mercury retrograde go, so it can still bring some kind of goodness down the road. But got to put that out there. So you're wondering about Venus in Leo. Okay, so with Venus in Leo, Venus is going to be moving into a solar sign. So this means that it's going to be a lot more action-packed, creative, dramatic, and it's moving into your second house. So this is a house that deals with money. It deals with, tangible things, luxury, indulgences, values, food. So you're going to be like probably, indulging a little bit on food or things that are beautiful. Comfort related things is very much kind of the second house. And what I think about for somebody who has as much Taurus as you do is the opposition to Pluto and then the square that it's going to make to your natal Mars. Okay, so Venus is going to go through, watch my Sunday astro video this weekend so you can see me talk about what Venus is going to do. But she's going to come into a opposition with Pluto and is square to your Mars. So there can be some like financial drama. It's very, very quick, but it's going to be like the 16th or the 17th. And really it's about you getting what you want, right? So this is about my resources, my security, my pleasure, and it's opposing Pluto. So it's like going like, okay, something can't have this control over me anymore. And Pluto in Aquarius could mean, debt issues, friendship issues, drama socially. And as it's coming into opposition with Pluto, it's also squaring your Mars. So there may be some drama online, or like there may be a little drama in like a social situation, but I would say Moon and Venus in the second house as you going, I got to do what's best for me. I got to invest in me. I need something that's going to really make me feel happy and fulfilled. And it's playing off of the sun. So it may mean that you're like, wow, I might have to let go of a friendship because it's not a friendship, because maybe you feel like you're holding out, waiting for somebody to come around and it doesn't feel good. Maybe it brings up some drama over whether or not you're feeling chosen, because the 11th house could be other people. And it's like you kind of going like, I have to choose me. I can't be feeling like I'm waiting for this other person to kind of make a decision. Like I'm going to make the decision. So watch for that. Venus will also be trining Neptune. So this will bring a lot of inspired ideas for your career, your professional life. Hey, it's going to be trining your moon. So it's about you focusing on healthy self-esteem, investing in yourself, possibly even seeing a little bit of like some positive, financial things that are going to happen. And then Venus is going to start to kind of move out of some of these oppositions, and it'll stabilize a little bit. It'll continue to go through your second house really until about June 27th. And then it's going to go into your 11th house, and it'll eventually go into Virgo, your third house. It'll eventually go into Virgo around July the 9th. But the picture that I'm painting is, especially for my Cancer risings, a lot of you guys are going to be like, oh, Venus is in my second house. Jupiter is in my second house. I can spend a lot of money on something. Jupiter could be travel. Jupiter could be education. It could be pets. Maybe you guys are buying an expensive piece of gym equipment, or you're joining like a gym or like a health spa, right? That could be Jupiter. Maybe you're springing on, some course, or you're going to be planning a trip and you're going to go, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to do it. And then Mercury's going to retrograde. So my advice is whether it's trips or luxury goods or anything that's connected to jewelry, anything that's connected to like valuables. Save your receipts, keep the tags, because a lot of my Cancer risings are going to be really optimistic about a financial situation, and they're going to be like, yes, I'm, the check's in the mail, or I'm going to get my bonus, or I'm going to get paid, or, I got the credit increase because Jupiter's opposing Pluto. But then there's a bit of a record scratch moment where then Mercury goes retrograde and you're like, wait, I thought something was going to come in and it's not coming in. And then you can be stressed about it. So nothing is guaranteed basically in June going into July. You need to really focus on what you deem valuable and only invest in the things or the people or the items that you feel like are going to make you feel the most happy or the most fulfilled. You'll get an opportunity to work through the Mercury retrograde with some of that stuff. And also, Jupiter is still a benefic, so it's still going to be going through your second house for the better part of like the next year. So once it comes out of an opposition with Pluto, I think some of like the financial pressures are going to calm down. Thankfully, you have that moon in Aries, so it's going to be trining your moon. So this is like you're going to get paid as much as you think you're worth. That's the most simple way that I can explain this. You're not going to let other people determine how valuable you are, how you feel about yourself. You have to invest in yourself a little bit more. So that can mean that, you're improving your workspace, right? Jupiter through your 6th house. You're working out more. You're eating differently. You're trying to be positive. And that's all going to funnel really good energy into your moon and Neptune. And also it's sextiling your Saturn and your Jupiter. So you've been in this Neptune on the moon, kind of feeling like emotionally isolated. You've been going through Neptune in opposition to Jupiter and Saturn, where there's a lot of you going like, what's happening with my professional life and my private life? And the trine is offering you a little bit of relief where you're like, you know what? I just have to believe that good things are coming to me. And the more that I'm investing in what's going to be good for me or what's actually aligning myself with my values, things are going to kind of ease up a little bit. I think that's a very, very important transit. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Jupiter will only be trining your moon really until about the end of July. So there could be some really good financial things that could happen for you. There could be some good job change stuff that could happen for you. I do think Jupiter hitting your North Node at a 5 is about getting more kind of creative in how you make money. Maybe you're investing yourself more in, going and doing theatrical related things, or investing yourself in things that are more of a flair, like this is going to be a summer where we're going to have the sun and Jupiter and Venus and eventually Mars, going through Leo. People are going to be spending more money focusing on longer hair, right? Jupiter is like that mane. You're going to see a lot of people who are going to have curly hair. They're going to wear a lot of loud, golden, sparkly things, jewelry, a lot of leopard and kind of animal print. We're going to see a lot of tan bodies. We're going to see a lot of sparkles. And so I kind of wonder if this is going to be influencing some of your style choices, because the 2nd house can actually be your face and how you're doing your makeup or what colors you're wearing. And it might bring you a little bit like more like confidence. So you'd be surprised if you make some style changes this year, how good you can kind of feel about it. And as a Taurus, you've got all these planets in Taurus. So you're going to hear, oh, it's about your home, it's about your family, it's about your mom. And I would be like, maybe, you're seeing cost increase when it comes to your living situation, but you might be thinking more about, well, what do I want in my home? Or how do I decorate my home? Or how can I make it feel a little bit more, lively? Or how can I kind of warm it up a little bit? So there can be some interesting kind of aesthetic choices that you're making to your home as well. So hopefully that's helpful to kind of like navigate the next month or so. Good luck with that Mercury retrograde. Pay attention to your dreams because you're going to have really strong intuitive hits about stuff that's going to be coming up also. All right. We have got, let's see. So we've got Sahad, and then I've got Rachel, and then we've got Donica. All of you guys are next. And let's see. So for Sahad, you guys had questions about a date. I remember seeing that email. Let me see. And it looked like it was for you and Rami. And you guys wanted to get another election date for the ceremony. Considering June 27, 2026 in Pennsylvania for our legal marriage ceremony, could you assess the date and recommend the best electional time between 4 and 8 p.m. or slightly later? Okay, so let's look at your composite first. All right, so then we'll create a new one, and this is the wedding date. And that was June 27, 2026. Down to the wire on this one. And you were thinking about doing it between 4 and 8 p.m. And that was going to be in Pennsylvania. Okay. Let's see, where was this? There we go. Okay, so there is the wedding date. Okay, so that's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. That's probably getting a little too late. So one of the things that I think about, oops, that's January. Hold on a second. It needs to be June. There we go. June 27th. Okay. So there's the 4 o'clock. So Scorpio rising, Mars at 29 degrees, 5 o'clock. Mars in the 7th at 29 degrees, 6 o'clock, Uranus on the descendant, Jupiter, well, we could tweak that a little bit. So, for example, I mean, it's going to be probably later than you want it, so I'm just going to tell you that now. But usually when you come to me and you're like, this is the day, you know, like, it's not always the best astrology, unfortunately. So I'm looking at, if it's a Sag rising, I would like to at least have the Sun and Jupiter in the 7th house, which you can accomplish around 7:40 p.m.-ish. You've got exalted Jupiter in the 7th. You've got Jupiter and Mercury conjunct, Jupiter, Mercury. The Sun is also in the 7th house, so it's bringing strength to the union. The problem is that you got the moon going through the 12th. So are you here in the chat? Are you watching? Because if you are, it'd be really, really helpful. Because you're saying it's for your legal marriage ceremony. Give me some feedback here. Did you guys already get married? Did you guys already have the religious ceremony? Is that something that already took place? Because if you did, that's your real marriage chart. I'm not going to say this doesn't matter. Obviously, you want good astrology, but like, you know, what you're telling me is you need something that's legally binding. If you already got married, then you're going to go off of the chart that you already had. And I'm not really crazy about the astrology this day, to be honest with you, because you're giving me a very limited window. And when we're even looking at, let's say, 3 p.m. on, okay, I can only work with just a very few ascendants. We've got the Libra rising, which is going to put Venus in the 10th, and it's in a trine to Saturn. That would be better. You don't have any malefics in your 7th house. You have Mars conjunct Algol, but what are you going to do? And Mars is going to be trining Pluto, which is good for marriage. And then you've got the Sun in the 9th house of ceremonies, and you've got Mercury and Jupiter there. So like, I feel inclined to tell you that you either need to be willing to go earlier with the ceremony, or you need to be going much later. And I'm not going to be flexible on that, because you start to lose certain aspects. And like, I like doing a marriage chart with, you know, Libra or Taurus rising if Venus is in good aspect, and Venus is in decent aspect. She's trining Saturn. So my thought is like doing this like ideally, you know, right around 3 p.m. Otherwise, you have to be willing to push this a little bit because a Mars, a Scorpio rising is not going to be great because you've got Mars at a critical degree. It's going to be in the 7th house, which is malefic, and it's conjuncting Uranus. So I don't like that. So that scratches 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Now we get into 6 p.m. And this is the Jupiter ruled chart where you're going to have Jupiter in the 8th. Not the strongest, and it's conjunct Mercury. So at least you have that working for you. Jupiter and Mercury, are together. But they're being influenced by the moon, and the moon's not seeing Mercury or Jupiter. Moon's trining Saturn. So I would say 3 p.m. or 6 p.m. would be better. But even with 6 p.m., you're going to have Uranus on the descendant. Now, that could mean that this is the celebration and that this is the second ceremony or the second wedding. But I don't like recommending, a marriage when you've got Uranus on the descendant. So, I'm not crazy about 6 o'clock. So then we get that out of there. Maybe it could be a little bit better when Uranus is out of the 7th and you've got the moon that's trining the ascendant. Venus is going to be in the 8th. I don't like that. So the other option you have is you do this right around 6:14, 6:15, while Venus is in the 9th house, which is legally binding. It's trining Saturn, which is with family, and it's trining the moon. And I'm very specific with this. 6:14, 6:15, that's when you should probably be exchanging vows. So I would plan on meeting there, going into the appointment at 6, with the intention of actually having the ceremony kind of wrapping up, or saying I do right around 6:14, 6:15. And then if we go later, it's going to put Venus in the 8th house, which I don't like. Then we go to Sag rising, where the sun's in the 7th, moon's in the 12th. We could do it as late as later, 8:30, but this is the PM hours. And now you're going to have the sun, Jupiter, and Mercury in the 7th. Great. This is ruled by Saturn, though. Saturn and Neptune is saying, some people aren't going to want to wait that long, or they're not going to want to be up that late. So you get what I'm saying? There's very, very few times that I have to kind of work with. So I would probably stick with either the 3 o'clock hour-ish with the Libra rising. Okay. And actually I would want to push Chiron out of your 7th. So I would probably say 3:15. Oops, hold on a second. That's going to be Scorpio rising. So we're not going to be able to avoid Chiron in the 7th. So, Venus trine Saturn. That's okay. You could do it right around 3 o'clock. I just don't want it to be a Scorpio rising horoscope because of Mars. So you could do it right around 3. And then if we look at your composite chart, together you guys are Leo rising, you have your sun in Aries, you have your moon in Sag. So look at, was it this one? Wedding date? No, this has got to go back a little bit. It's got to go back to 3. Okay, so there we go. So there would be one of the proposed wedding charts. I already see a couple of things interesting that kind of work. One is that you're going to have Jupiter along your ascendant, which is great. You're going to have your lunar return, which is great. You're going to have Saturn that is still in conjunction to your Venus and kind of starting to trine Venus, which is great. Pluto's moving away from your Mars, good. And you've got Uranus coming in conjunction with Jupiter. So that might mean that the Mars-Uranus conjunction isn't that big of a deal. It's just kind of more like, oh, it's the second celebration. If you had a previous religious ceremony and now everybody can get together and celebrate, I don't know. But it's doable. I would much rather you do it then before, Jupiter starts opposing Pluto and squaring stuff. And this is a really nice trine with the moon trining Saturn and also trining Venus. So my recommendation is 3:15 p.m. if you're going to do that on the 27th. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you guys. Let me know what happens. Congratulations. All right, we've got, who's next? We've got Rachel, and then Donica, and then Claudine. What's up, Rachel? Nope, wrong Rachel. So I think it's this one. Yeah. All right, Miss Rachel, Libra rising, Sun in Taurus, Moon in Libra. Rachel says, hi, Candace. Hope you're doing well. I would like some insight on work and my mental health. I'm currently processing grief and healing from loss. At the same time, I want to maintain my job and health through it has been challenging. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm sorry to hear you're going through that. I don't know what it pertains to, but kind of makes sense in your chart. So first things first is I want to focus on what's going on with Venus, because Venus is going to kind of tell me a lot of what's happening. So Venus has been coming into conjunction with Jupiter, which basically means, hey, I feel good when I'm working, want to focus on my career growth, want to be visible, want to be seen. But kind of playing on what I said about the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, I've been talking to a lot of people about it. Like, Jupiter makes things bigger, right? So it can mean it brings the situation to a point where it goes like pop. And Jupiter is difficult for you because it's intercepted in your third. So it's about you kind of being like, how do I talk to my people at work or my clients, or, you know, how do I navigate expressing what's on my mind professionally, number one. And right around the time that the Venus-Jupiter conjunction happened, the moon was actually going through Aries. So let's go back. And that kind of represents the clearing out of like a relationship or the loss of someone or something. So it could be a romantic relationship. It could be, seventh house could be a therapist. It could be a counselor. It could be a grandparent. And this is really, really difficult territory because it's squaring all of your planets that you have in your fourth house. So it could be family loss. And it's squaring all the transits that are moving through Cancer, including your natal Mars. So it's representing you going, okay, you know, seventh house relational issues, really putting me in a fork in the road with how I navigate, you know, home and family, my emotions, heaviness, right? Saturn being there, and the need to be out and about and be, you know, kind of forward moving with your career. And like, can only give you feedback. I mean, I'm born in 89 too, so I've got some of the same oppositions. And the Saturn-Neptune square has fucking sucked, like beyond belief, because I realized that so much of like the Capricorn has been like, this is the way things have always been, right? So whether that's your family, your emotional kind of tendencies, like whatever, there is this sense now of you going into your seventh house being like, I need more support. Seventh house might be a therapist. It could be a partner. It could be talking to an astrologer to help you navigate how you move forward with some of your professional plans. All right, so that's number one. Number two is you're going through your nodal return. And naturally, if you're Libra rising and you've got your south node in Virgo, because it is picking up the energy of your 12th house, there's this aspect where you're just kind of like, I have to get comfortable with like kind of being in this space, right? South node of the 12th house is isolating, being alone, being in bed, sometimes dealing with health, but be that mental, physical, you know, whatever. And like, it's your nodal return. So it was going to put you in a situation where you were going to be saying, I need to kind of take a step back away from people. It's in your Placidus 11th, where you can really reevaluate what your goals are and like what is good for you, what is healthy for you, Virgo. Now it's been, I think, a little bit more difficult because Uranus has been squaring your north and your south node. And Uranus is kind of coming into conjunction with Mercury, which is your 12th house lord, which is going to be about your mental health. And naturally, when you have, you know, Uranus conjunct Mercury, we can feel like the old ways of communicating, processing, whatever is now kind of creating a situation where we feel like we're kind of having like a mental breakdown. Especially if your Mercury is retrograde. And like, this is a chart that you don't see it, but it's like actually going through an upgrade. Like to me, it's kind of like you going, okay, what am I learning about loss and grief and alone time and what I flush out of my life? And, you know, what are the lessons there, right? Uranus in your ninth. It could also bring in opportunities to, you know, go to healing centers, go to healing circles, to be going to retreats, to be traveling. I mean, this is a chart that even though I know that you're like, hey, super responsible, focused on work, the retrograde is saying a lot of the same things, that you may potentially have to take a break from work. You may have to make a statement. You may have to make a public statement, talk to a boss, take a leave of absence. And like what it wants you to do is go away and travel and shift something about your frame of mind and your philosophy. And like, not doing that is really going against your astrology. You know, I'm of the frame of mind that's like the universe will keep rerouting you. But when you're getting to squares with the north and the south node, it's basically saying, hey, we have to get out of this. And the north node is in Pisces, where you work endlessly and you give, 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 give. Now, maybe you do spiritual work, maybe you create art, Pisces. But it's basically saying now it's time to level up, and it's not so much about working and grinding. It's not so much about staying home and being in bed and isolating. It's about throwing yourself into something that's going to dramatically shift your frame of mind, which is like, what this needs is a road trip, you know? And I'm not encouraging you to like be, you know, not be responsible with work. But I think that Mercury retrograde, to top it all off, is in a square to Saturn, where you don't feel like you can completely show up the way that you want to show up, right? Like I think about like having had, just similar to you, you're going through the transit too. Saturn square your natal Neptune and natal Saturn. You know, when I went through that, mine was at 10 degrees like last month. I was like, I can't show up for work. You know, I went 9 days without posting a video. Horrible. It was like killed me. But I also was kind of like, I'm really sick and I can't talk and I'm in bed and I'm exhausted and I can't show up for other people the way that I want to, with Jupiter being in my 10th house, if I'm not feeling well. And so it was a lot of me having to kind of go through that and process that and create some of those boundaries with other people. I'm only giving you that feedback because you're going through some of the same transits. And so something that I realized during that process was like, if I'm not 100%, I don't feel right showing up and giving guidance, or I don't feel right, you know, charging for readings or even putting videos out there, because it's not going to be me being my best. So, you know, you'll get some interesting advice this year. I think with Saturn in your 7th house, it's a great time obviously to get a reading, but it's also a good time to like work with a therapist, work with a life coach. Talk to somebody who's going to help you, you know, deal with and process this grief, and know that it's just moving through. It's not going to be something that's going to be permanent. So I'm not sure what or who kind of left your life, but it is going to be something that will get better. This is also about, you know, maybe recognizing that rather than pushing through it, and I really want to drive this point home, you know, because you will eventually have a Mars retrograde at the beginning of next year over your south node, that if you are not leaning into healthier ways of balancing your emotions and dealing with grief or relational issues in work, the universe is going to send you a message that's going to be pretty loud at the beginning of next year that might put you in a place where you're like, okay, I haven't dealt with these things and now I have to do it. I say that because by the time you get to, you know, Mars in your 12th house and it starts sitting on your south node around end of November, beginning of December, Mars is then going to start squaring your Venus and Mercury and Uranus. So, you know, there could be unresolved issues, grief, trauma, relational issues, whatever, that are now coming back up, and it's creating a bigger challenge for you. Like now it's really starting to shift your spiritual belief system, your philosophy. Mars, you know, going retrograde in the 12th can bring isolation. It can bring kind of like illness-related issues. I'm just telling you this because you're not going to like Mars squaring your Venus and Uranus on your Venus. Like then it is going to force you to like go and get some perspective and kind of go away, but it could be for a much longer period of time. And then your moon rules your career, right? So, you know, the moon on the ascendant means that you like to work, but your moon squares Mars, which means you can overdo it. And you've got Saturn that's opposing your moon. It literally means you're like, I've had this loss. There's somebody who's left my life. I don't feel emotionally capable of showing up. But it's squaring your Mars where you're like, well, but I have bills to pay. I've got to make money. I've got to be seen. And it's highlighting that Chiron conjunction too, where it's like, how much work is too much work? So Saturn's actually creating a grand cardinal cross in your chart. And the Mercury retrograde is highlighting this. And it's basically being like, does it make sense to go and deal with it now? And yeah, it might suck that you can't show up maybe. And there's some inconsistency with your work and your kind of your habits and how you're communicating and connecting over the next month. Or like, do you want to pay for it in a much bigger way next year? You know, that's how I would be thinking about it. And unfortunately, one of the more difficult transits is definitely Saturn squaring Neptune. I feel like it's just everything that we thought that we knew or everything that we thought we believed in. It definitely can bring some massive kind of disappointment, and it really opens us up to needing to kind of heal parts of ourselves that we haven't fully integrated. That's kind of how I see it. So it's not just Saturn that's opposing your moon, but Saturn's at the midpoint basically or the anti-midpoint of your Mars and also your natal Saturn. And it's just kind of like, do you want to be stuck in the past or do you want to heal and move forward? Even having Mars conjunct Chiron, it's like you work to a point where you can work yourself to death or you can make yourself sick, trying to balance out, integrating being out in your professional life, and then that lack of not getting the emotional fulfillment in the fourth house. I mean, like, number one thing I would be focused on doing with some of these transits right now is trying to see if you can get some time off work. If you work for yourself, I mean, easier said than done, but like it's going to be something that's really worth making that investment, and maybe, you know, going and doing a little bit of like a spiritual pilgrimage, maybe going on a road trip for a couple days, getting some perspective, working with a grief counselor, working with a therapist, because Saturn's going to help you kind of integrate some of these pieces. And I think you'll find as you're kind of getting into later July, going into August, when these, you know, when these transits pass, and you're going to see that planets are going to start moving into your 11th house, community, friends, and goals are all going to be supporting you more. But all year long, Saturn's opposing your moon, it's squaring Saturn, it's squaring your Mars. So that tells me this isn't going to go away. There's going to be a process of dealing with the grief. It might ease up a little bit in August, but it's going to come back again September. And then it's going to come back again. And you're going to see that when Saturn squares your Mars, which is going to be in January. And it's going to square your Saturn and your moon. And then you're going to be out of that. And that's, to me, it's very fascinating because it's really highlighting the fact that Mars is going to retrograde again. And like, you're talking to somebody who's going through some of the same transits. So it's kind of me looking at it the same way, being like, all right, do I take the time to do some of this stuff now or do I wait? Only you can decide what's going to work best for you. But having all those planets in Gemini, it's really trying to get you to broaden your perspective about how you kind of think and how you see the world. And sometimes a new mentor or somebody comes into your life that kind of helps you shake out all the old ways of thinking and kind of adapt to some of the changes that are kind of going on. So I hope that that's helpful. Sending you lots of love as you're going through your changes right now. All right, we have got Donica, Claudine, Meredith. You guys are all on deck. So let's go and look at Donica. I'm going to put your sun up here too so we can take a peek at that. Let's see. Where is Donica? There we go. Looking for the reading. Just wanted to see if I could look at money with my son, but transits are fine. Best ways to make money and start projects. So just because you got a synastry reading, so I'm just going to tell you, putting his transits over your transits, I want to see, does he have any aspects in your 2nd house or in your 8th house or in your 10th house or maybe in your 6th house? Some, sure. But he does not have any personal planets in your 2nd house. So when you ask me, is he going to bring me wealth? I'm going to be like, not necessarily off the bat. Okay? Jupiter rules your children. And Jupiter is going to be going into Leo this year. So naturally, a lot of Leos are going to be like, oh, I want children. I'm spending time with my children. I'm working with children. You know, there's going to be more of a theme that's going to be kind of going on in regards to your relationship with kids. Your money is going to be more Mercury. And if you look at this, you've got some really interesting placements in Virgo that oppose your 7th house. So like when it comes to you and business partners and money, or you and marital partners and money, things don't always jive. Right? I'm sure you've seen this. Because Uranus, Pluto, and Mars means there's always some kind of like dramatic, okay, what is mine? What am I working for? Versus you feel like people can take advantage of you. Saturn, Chiron, you know, invest in Pisces. So there's a sense of back and forth with money. It all squares your Venus, your Mercury, and your South Node. So it means maybe you look at it and you go, well, is the solution my son? You know, is working with him going to be potentially helpful? Maybe, because he squares some of those places. But if this were me, you know, when you're asking about what you need to really kind of focus on, personally, I feel like, you know, a lot's kind of happening in this chart. Let's talk first about the fact that the North Node's coming into conjunction with Saturn. So, you know, getting a reading, great. 7th house is your astrologer, but it could be your therapist, it could be your marketplace, things you want to sell. potential business partnerships, and it's really trying to get you to open up to the idea of working and collaborating with another person. Okay, this is all being fueled by Jupiter, by the way, and Jupiter is technically in your 12th house, in your 11th house, but it's going into your 12th. So the one thing I would say in this next year that I would not do is I would not take new business partners. Like, you either work by yourself, or if you want to work with your kid, you can work with your kid. Be very cautious when Jupiter goes into your 12th house, because you will see some things where people are going to come in and they're going to want to collaborate with you, or they're going to be talking to you about making investments and stuff. And quite frankly, I don't think you can trust them. That's just me. Also, the North Node hitting Saturn is really activating your whole sign 6th house, which is about work, business, coming up with a routine, focusing on getting things done. And it's also going to be activating your sun, because it's kind of sextiling your sun still. So working with your sun, partnering with your sun, that's why this is coming up for you right now. And you see this as like an opportunity. So she says, I started publishing this last year, moon astrology journals. I think that that's a good example, maybe, you know, of now you've got, you know, planets that are moving out of your 10th house, at least whole sign. You know, Uranus going into Gemini for Leo risings is like, want to create community, want to collaborate with other people, want to make, you know, kind of like propositions to work with other astrologers, work with other brands, work with other people who might be interested in what I'm selling, that kind of stuff. But you're a later degree Leo rising. So you actually probably, you know, definitely watch what's going on with the solar transits, watch what's going on with the sun, Neptune squaring your sun. So there's a lot of going, how can I generate more money with what I'm creating, and, you know, my business, right? Sun in the 5th house, and questioning whether or not you're seeing things clearly. And sometimes Neptune distorts, so it can be distorting some of the financial kind of like relationships that you have with family and your kids. So that's the other thing I would say about working with him is, how are you going to pay him? What's the setup going to be? Are you paying him salary? Are you going to pay him a percentage of what you sell? Are you going to pay him flat rate for kind of marketing? That needs to be kind of worked out. And like, people do need to be paid, because I think with Neptune going into the 8th house, he may help you with some stuff, but he also might be like, Mom, like, if you want me to help you, like, you know, like, pay me and I'll help you. I can dedicate more time to it. So there could be some misunderstandings about that. And you have the South Node that's still moving through your 1st house, and it's going to connect to your ascendant. And that's going to happen around here. So that's going to be around the end of July going into August. And then it's going to kick into the North Node. So you'll notice with the North Node being in your 7th house and Saturn kind of being in your whole sign 9th, you'll have more opportunities for international publishing. Maybe I would be asking for testimonials and feedback for some of your moon journals and some of your products. You may contemplate, you know, taking on a publishing agent, or like working with a publishing house, or maybe you could be working once again with your sun, you know, because that's kind of connected to your sun in Capricorn, who's helping manage anything connected to promotion, advertising, sales, marketing. So like, if something were going to kick in, I would say, probably wait until you're starting to see at, you know, around the eclipses in August. That would be a better time to do like a promotional campaign for some of this stuff. I'm not saying do it on the date of the eclipse. I wouldn't recommend doing it then, but maybe before Saturn goes retrograde. So you're going to have a nice little transit here around the 24th and 25th of July. Yes, Mercury's still retrograde, but it's past the midway point. And you're also going to have a nice little pop here when the sun and Mercury are on your ascendant, and it's trining the moon around August 22nd. So those are some good dates for publishing, for marketing, you know, for getting recognition. Making money is going to be more Virgo or Mercury. And so Saturn's going to start coming into a trine with your Mercury this year. So definitely sales and marketing will improve. And then Jupiter's also going to trine your Mercury. Now this is interesting. This is where your sun does come into this, right? Sagittarius is your whole sign 5th. So it's like, okay, could I partner with my son? Could he do work? You know, yes, if he gets paid adequately, sure. And then also Jupiter being in your 1st house, as it's expanding, you know, people are seeing you as somebody who's getting more attention. Like, as a Leo rising, you don't want to waste the opportunities that are coming this summer. I think it's crazy not to, because you have so many planets sitting in your sign. And then you'll see that there's more focus on money when Mercury is getting into your 2nd house. So for example, there's going to be a Cazimi around August 27th. You're going to have an eclipse that's going to be around August 28th, which is very financially driven, and it's squaring Uranus. So you're not going to see if some of the emphasis that you're putting on some of these products and these marketing campaigns, probably in July and August, if it's making money or if it's making a splash until about the end of August, beginning of September. And that's an anything goes types of eclipse. Could certainly bring in more clients, or you could be selling more, and that's picking up the energy of Jupiter, which is in your sign. So you could very well see a lot more people are interested in what you have. And then things get interesting. Sun and Mercury going into your second house, kind of like in September, is very money driven. And then you're going to see the Sun opposed Saturn. So do watch some of the financial situations that are going to come up around early October. And then Venus is going to retrograde, basically because Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde from Scorpio into Libra. Buying cars, moving, selling property, those kinds of things you want to watch out for. And the bigger money transits are going to be Mars. So when Mars gets into Virgo, okay, at the very end of the year, you're going to feel like spending money, right? I would use this transit to be saving money because Mars is going to retrograde. So you're going to see it turn retrograde in early January. And if Mars is connected to your home, your property, your family, it can mean that you're reassessing your living situation, or if you're moving, or if you're relocating. There could be legal issues connected to property. So I'd be very careful with that, and I would be watching my finances, especially the first 4 months of next year, because there can be some slowdown or kind of delays with your resources. And then it'll come back into your ascendant sign, which is stronger, not pushing any new products January really through about mid-April. So you want to take that time to kind of integrate, reevaluate. Maybe you're writing or designing something new. And then when both Jupiter and Mars are direct, the second half of April is a good time for a launch. So just for some peace of mind, just want to let you know that stuff. And then it looks like your sun, because he's got his sun, his moon on your sun. Yeah, you guys create well together. He's got his Venus in your third, so that's good for like communications, website stuff. His Venus trines your Saturn, so that works. And his Saturn's pretty close to your Jupiter, so he could help kind of reel in some of your, publishing ideas and kind of make them a little bit more so grounded. And his Saturn and his Jupiter trine some of your personal placements. Just, with Sun and Pluto very close to your Mercury, there is definitely going to be a debate as to like, well, Mom, what am I getting paid? So maybe it's a matter of being like, I'll pay you a baseline percentage, and I'll give you a percent of whatever I sell. So you're creating incentive to get him to go out there and kind of market and promote some of your things, okay? That's basically what I see. So hopefully that's kind of helpful in giving you some navigation until the end of the year. All right. And good luck with your journals. That's exciting. We've got Claudine, and then Meredith, and then Rachel. Libra rising, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Aquarius. All right, let's see what she has to say. And I think she sent it in an earlier message. Claudine, are you here? Why am I not seeing your message? I know it was here somewhere. There she is. Okay, people didn't let me add a note. July 22nd, 67, got you. I was up for a job that I didn't get. I'm so disappointed. I'm going through my Saturn return, feeling defeated by Jupiter return. But Jupiter return in mid-August. Please tell me I'm not stuck in a job that I hate. No, I got you. Well, my dear, part of this is like, And I've seen this for a couple Libra risings. They're like, I was supposed to get this, position, or I was supposed to get this raise or whatever, and then they didn't get it. And a lot of that is like sometimes the Jupiter optimism can like overshadow stuff. Obviously Venus is sitting on your sun, so like it's still saying there's lots of potential for things to come. And yes, you're going to have your Jupiter return, but you got to look at what's going on with the moon. Okay, that's what you have to look at. So the moon and the Jupiter conjunction, we're not seeing each other. On top of that, you're going to have, when you go back and you look at the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction, or the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, sorry, the moon was squaring. So the moon was in Aries. So it brought up some reality check in regards to professional relationships. And it was like, okay, I'm expecting something positive. And then it's like, oh, okay, there was like a letdown, or this is closing something out because it's squaring all of your planets here. So it's having you really reevaluate and kind of look at who you're working with or who you're working for, and whether or not you want to continue to honor that kind of working, contract. If you notice, if you look at your chart, you've got Saturn in Aries at a 12. So yes, you're in your Saturn return. You've got Mercury in Cancer at a 12. So when Venus and Jupiter were conjunct, yeah, it was great, but it was highlighting your issues that you have with like visibility, being seen, being recognized, whether or not people were going to give you the feedback or the support to help you kind of grow and evolve. And it was like, you didn't get it. I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. I hate to be like that. I've had 4 interviews on the 23rd, but this firm has ghosted me in the past. So now we move to where we're at now, where the retrograde is going to bring things back. Okay, so something to consider is, if you're not crazy about some of the people you tried to connect with and they weren't communicating well and things were not progressing and you kind of feel like, okay, that's a dead end, it's trying to get you to move on and consider working and connecting and collaborating with other people. It ain't over. Jupiter is going to hit your sun. So Jupiter hitting your sun might mean that you end up going and like talking to a new company or like for a new position. And like, June 16th when Moon and Jupiter meet might yield better results. When Jupiter is sitting on your sun, so that'll be here around June 26th. And then Mercury is going to retrograde over your sun. So somebody may come back to you at the end of June, beginning of July, and want to connect. And then you're going to have the Cazimi. So there's going to be some breakthrough moment where you're going to be able to determine which of these potential connections you can let go and who's coming back and is serious. And then you're going to have a new moon. So knowing that there's a Mercury retrograde, there's going to be a new moon. It's like whatever you're supposed to start, likely I don't think you're going to see anything that's really going to line up until at least mid-July, maybe the end of July, between the new moon and the retrograde. Okay, well, Mercury's trining your Neptune, so it's helping you try to find your dream job. That's what's going on. And then the retrograde's over, boom, and then you have got Jupiter that's going to leave your 10th house of career, and that's not going to be until about mid-August. So there's a lot going on. It's almost like, and I keep telling myself as Libra rising, I'm like, whatever's not working right now, there's a reason, or something is being cleared out to make more space or develop something that needs to be developed, or like when the time is right. And I'm just trying to kind of go with the flow. You have a lot better aspects, I think, than a lot of Libra risings, because you've got later placements in Cancer. And you're also going to see with your moon, now the eclipses are going to start happening in the sign of your moon. It's like it wants you to be in a position where you're either running your own company, or you have more creative control, or you're going to bring in a job that's going to be more exciting and it's going to be more fulfilling and kind of future-minded. Seems like our mantra. I really kind of feel like also, Mars going into a trine with your moon too is going to broaden your horizons. So Mars is going to come into a conjunction with Uranus. It's going to trine Pluto. And then it's going to start trining your moon. And that might be part of this, that you're just like, maybe there's a different avenue work-wise that I didn't consider. And Uranus is now influencing the Mercury retrograde. This might mean that you're looking for jobs that are further away or relocating for work. And that's part of like the mindset shift that you're going through. But my God, with your Saturn return square Mercury, go back and think about what happened in the late 90s. There was either some relational change that impacted your career or your status, or there was some career change that impacted your relationships. Something like that is going to be, kind of going on as you go through this. And I also kind of feel like with Jupiter hitting your sun at a critical degree, you might catch the eye of somebody really significant, somebody who's going to be like, oh, I want to talk to her. And like that is a degree that deals with, like, it's an interact degree, but it's about fame, it's about recognition, and somebody's going to see where you're going to stand out and you're going to be very different. So I welcome the delay of other interviews or people calling you back. I also feel like Mercury's tie to your 12th house is about release mantras, rituals, taking time and being like, okay, the universe is handling it for me. Whatever's supposed to kind of fall into my lap will, things are falling apart so better things can kind of fall together. And that's not necessarily telling you like, just be positive and everything's going to work out. It's like you have to detach from whatever you were hoping to do to let something else better in. Does that make sense? Pluto's getting close to your moon too, my dear. So you're going to have some destined kind of definitive change with your professional life as it gets closer. That's still not for another 2 years or so. But in the future, the North Node's going to hit that. And usually when I see that in the 5th house, it's like somebody launches their own business, or they have some new creative endeavor, or they just start consulting, or they kind of go in their own direction. And like you're going to do it in a different way, right? It does. I don't know how to let go of things. I'm like a dog with a bone. Cancer is connected to memory, right? And, holding on to what you believe work should be. And like also Libra risings, because they have Virgo in the 12th, they're just very hypercritical. And like you got a lot of Virgo there, and the South Node's going through there, which is teaching you like you can't worry, you can't stress yourself, you can't freak yourself out about stuff. You just have to let it go. And whatever was delayed during the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, you're probably still going to end up getting, and it's going to be better when it hits your sun. And all I can tell you is the sun's going to be solar figures, so really prominent men, things that are maybe connected to neighbors, brothers, maybe people who you kind of know socially, and they're like making a connection for you. And networking is really big when Jupiter goes into your 11th house as well, right? And then I would say come back, and by the time the Mercury retrograde's over and Mercury's on your sun, tell me what ends up happening by about mid-August. That's what I want to see. Because that's when the Mercury cycle is over, Jupiter's left your sun, you're going to have your Jupiter return, and now you're going to have Jupiter in opposition to your moon. If anything, it's about probably going into either a different field or a different company than you anticipated kind of like working for, but Jupiter's going to trine Saturn. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of manifests, and definitely feeling like you're going to have a lot better kind of like community and like support system as you go through some of these career changes. Also watch when Mars goes through Cancer as well. So when it comes into conjunction with Mercury and squares Saturn, that could be like another hurdle. And obviously Saturn's going to continue to go through Aries and square your Mercury. So to some extent, there's a little bit of like having to stay optimistic. And I love Saturn in the 7th house in Aries, like working with a career coach, working with a headhunter, working with a job placement specialist, somebody who can take out all of the heavy lifting and like the mental search would be really good for you. So you don't feel like you're the one who's kind of like doing it, And then money, you got Pluto that's been squaring your Mars. So you're having to be a little bit more conservative with spending and things kind of connected to family or children if you have kids. You're pretty much done with that. You're going to see that start to kind of subside later this year. You will probably see some bigger money trends happen when you get into like October and November, but Libra risings have to be extremely careful with money this year because Venus will go into your 2nd house, which represents spending and luxury, and then it will retrograde. So, it's Libra rising. I'd be like, look, be more conservative, save money, don't spend as much, so that way when you get into October or November, when you see these retrogrades happen, you're not surprised by some kind of potential loss, or if there is some kind of delay, or if you have to kind of pay an unexpected bill, or you're having to kind of dip into your savings. And this is going to square Mars. So it's probably going to be a lot of the expenses are going to be relating to parties, friends, kind of socializing, but you have to be more conservative, and then money starts to kind of improve from about mid-November on. So hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, we've got Meredith. Correct. My son's getting married in July. Well, that's exciting. Meredith and then Rachel, you guys are up next. All right, Meredith says, Mary Mary, sorry. March 26, 1969, 3:15 p.m. in Melbourne, Australia. Hi, I hope you're well. In a couple readings, you have mentioned going from rags to riches. Is this a transit that will switch? Is there a transit that will switch this on? Is it related to Jupiter, Uranus conjunction? Please help. Okay, so your second house is intercepted through Leo. Okay. So this means that when it comes to your money, your creative kind of self-expression, artistic abilities, self-employment, taking risks, taking chances, the sun is kind of a blind spot for you. And this year, the sun is receiving a conjunction from Saturn. So this is about somebody telling you, hey, there's going to be some positive money changes. And Neptune sitting on your sun. And you're like, where is it? I can't see it. Usually for Cancer risings, Aries is the 10th house, and you have some planets that are in Aries, but it's pretty much the 8th and the 9th. So part of what's going on is like Saturn sitting on your sun is delaying something connected to change and transformation with career and also your status, but it's also going to be bringing in resources that will come through other people. So the 8th house is like inheritance, sometimes lottery winnings, sometimes it's connected to wealthy spouse, sometimes it could mean there's some kind of government support or there is some kind of windfall or like a settlement. These things are usually 8th house, and it's all connected to Mars. So likely it's going to be something that's going to be associated either with your health, Sagittarius, or with your home, 4th house. And Saturn is sitting on your sun this year. It's kind of moved away, and now it's trining Mars. And Jupiter is going to be going into your money house, and it's going to trine your sun. So it's almost impossible for there not to be some improvement of your financial situation soon. I would say the window starts to open when Jupiter starts coming into a trine with your north node. So that's going to be from like the very first week of July, and then it'll continue to be in a trine with your sun until about the end of July. So July is the month where things start to change. And then you're going to start to see Jupiter come into a trine with your Venus and your Saturn, which could also solidify some of your financial things. Now, obviously, I use Placidus, so the chart looks a little skewed. It looks a little different. Most of your second house is going to be Virgo. It's got a little bit of Libra in there, too. So those retrogrades that are going to be coming up later in the year, in October and November, are likely going to be reversals and changes of situations. So what you'll probably find is that another window will be like October and November, when these planets retrograde in your 4th house whole sign, and this could represent a change in your kind of fortune and your living situation in November. And then you're going to see those planets continue to move on. And by the time I would say Saturn and Neptune's off of your sun, that's when you're going to see some pretty dramatic changes with your finances. So Saturn's off of your sun. It'll be kind of near there this year, but Neptune is going to be there in May of next year, and then it's going to kind of go back and forth, and then it's going to start to finally move away from your sun in the spring of 2028. So will you see some financial growth this year? I guess that is the question. Yes. With Jupiter in your money house, with it in a trine to Saturn. Also, you're going to see that Jupiter and Saturn are going to trine. Yes. But I think that it's still a process for 2 years until you get Neptune off of your sun, where you're not like feeling like you're searching for purpose, you're searching for resources, you're searching for stable money. And what's interesting is when this happens, Jupiter is in your Placidus second house, and it's trining Saturn. So you will have that financial stability about 2 years from now. It's going to come in pockets. Probably the first pocket, other than in July, is going to be this next eclipse, where you're going to have a solar eclipse in Leo, which is going to trine Saturn. And so there's going to be an opportunity to transform your financial situation. Saturn in your 8th might mean that it comes through some support from another person, or it could become, a situation where you have money coming you didn't expect, or there's a breakthrough with debt or with loans. And then that'll unfold for about, 6 to 18 months. And then you're going to see when planets hit these degrees, so like when Jupiter hits it in October, that's another financial kind of reset point. And then when Mars hits that in November, another financial reset point. And then you will see them both retrograde over that point. So it could be bringing money back to you in February and March of next year. Then they both go direct, and Jupiter's going to hit it one more time in June. So those will be the peak periods. Very difficult when you have so many planets that are, I mean, if you have your luminaries, your chart ruler, your sun, your moon that are intercepted, it's almost like you can't see anything. So everything that is within the Leo Aquarius axis, that means your sun, that also means Uranus, which oppose each other, represent this lifelong back and forth blind spot between, what do I put into this world? What financial challenges, what kind of resource issues, what kind of falling out financially, do I experience? And how does it change and transform me? Or how do I learn not to just be a giver, but to also receive? And Aries means that you're strong, you're willing to kind of overcome some of the financial challenges that you've had. You've had to kind of go through your Phoenix moment several times. Certainly having the Saturn-Neptune conjunction to your North Node recently is a lot of being like, why am I here? What's going on? How much more can I take? And the finale is having Neptune going over your sun. This is all heavily aspecting your Jupiter and Uranus too, by the way. So it's trying to get you to really tap into unlimited resources and a wealth of, innovation. Jupiter, Uranus in your second house is like, how can I build relationships and partnerships? How can I find ways to be able to kind of balance out my finances? And money's not easy with other people here. You've probably had experiences where other people have kind of taken you for a ride or taken advantage of you, or, you were disappointed to find out that they couldn't be trustworthy, that kind of stuff. And now it's kind of rewriting that storyline as Saturn and Neptune are sitting on your sun, where you're like, no, I'm making decisions for me. I'm looking out for myself. I'm not going to be caving to other people. And perhaps you start to see the forest through the trees over the summer, but the retrograde is probably what's actually going to bring you either a pretty dramatic change in your love life or even your living situation that could help you balance out some of this kind of financial tension that you've got going on in your chart. Not to mention, it all squares the moon, which is your chart ruler. So the moon in the 12th house also constantly thinks about, should I relocate? Should I go to another country? Or should I be in an isolated place? Or do I need to be, kind of like away from it all, or closer to like the ocean, or kind of like to the beach? She said, yes, I feel blindfolded and I get blindsided a lot, not in a good way. And that's why you have to be careful, is when planets go through Aries and Libra, you have to be very, very careful. So like Aries season, end of March into April, Libra season, end of September, end of September into October. That's where you're going to see some of the biggest changes that are going to happen. And like, unfortunately, you've got Neptune hovering around those degrees for another 2 years. So it's just about, making sure that you're not somebody who's falling victim to some kind of financial fraud, or, having something hacked or kind of taken. Neptune can also mean that you're transcending a lot of this, and you're contemplating, thinking about, moving places where your money's going to go further, or you're going to have some kind of freedom. I have a rule. I mean, anybody who's got moon in the 12th house, they should always experience living in another country, because you'll emotionally feel much better. And the moon is also strongly associated, with changes in residence, your emotions, but also it's fluid. So it can be like money. And your sun and your moon square. So there's a part of you that's like, no, I have a responsibility. I have things I have to do. I have to stay here. But the moon's like, actually, no, I would really like to go and be somewhere else. And it might be, worth really looking at like your astrocartography and seeing if there's some places that if you were open to moving or relocating, or even going on an extended trip, that you could go, that you would start to really see some of the emotional and some of the financial shifts that would then take place. At the very least, if you can't do that, then the moon that is squaring some of these placements in financial houses means that you need to take time, you need to reflect, you need to be checking in with yourself and kind of meditating and being like, what should I do? Or how can I be manifesting a change with my financial situation? And, 8th house is other people's money. So having like the sun, Chiron, North Node, Mercury there. I mean, I've seen people who later in life, they find a significant other and they get married, and then, they meet a wealthy person, and then all of a sudden they're with them, and then that person dies and leaves them everything. I've seen that a lot actually with some of these oppositions, where at first the opposition is really painful, but then it manifests as like, your financial situation can turn on a dime. And I remember looking at your chart being like, you should really, I'm not encouraging you to like become, somebody who's like, oh, I just want a sugar daddy, but like, you know, looking at relationships as like, what can you offer me that I can't offer myself? Like, what can you do for me? And start looking at relationships as not just something that's about love. I hate to be like this, but like relationships, you have to be on the same page and there has to be an even exchange. So if you're giving somebody, you know, companionship, if you're giving somebody commitment, if you're potentially sharing a space or living with someone, what is somebody doing to kind of, you know, help you? And I say that specifically with your living situation, because Mars is the North Node ruler and it's in the 4th. So like you may meet people who live in other countries or other cities and they're like, yes, I want to be with you, you know, come here and be with me. And I would be like, you know, I can't go to another country. I'm not gonna be able to work. And they'll be like, okay, you can stay with me, you know, and there will be situations that you'll kind of work out like that. She says, I would love to move to Ukraine to help, but I need to pay off my ex's debts first. And that's the other thing, debts, right? So your debt is the 8th house. Other people's debt is the 2nd. So part of that retrograde, perhaps the goal pretty much from October until spring of next year is, can you pay those debts off? Can you set yourself free from that? And there's always an interesting storyline about how you're on the hook for, you know, other people's finances or resources just because of the opposition. Other people will take on debt simply because you have Pluto, the South Node, Jupiter, and Uranus in your second. That's other people's debt. Some of that might be forgiven during the retrogrades, or you might be able to pay some of it down. So I would watch for that. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Meredith. We've got Rachel. All right, my dear. My ears perked up when I saw your comment about Mr. Pajama Guy. So guess what? Pajama Guy and I are back together as of April. He's leveling up for sure. I just hope it sticks this time. Do you see us making it from here? And I've got his info as well. But just a little bit about the relationship stuff. Jupiter. Okay, that rules your 7th. Obviously, Jupiter is moving through the late degrees of Cancer. It is going to stay in your 11th house pretty much until August. And then I would be watching in August once Jupiter is in your 12th house, like, is there still consistency there, right? That's what I would focus on. The other thing is Chiron is coming into Taurus here this week. It's going to be very close to Venus, so it's trying to get you to open up and kind of heal your views of love, relationship, security, and commitment. And when we look at your natal Jupiter, Saturn is squaring it. So there's definitely a sense of you expecting more vulnerability, commitment, maturity, them really, you know, pulling their weight, you know, in relationships and wanting something real with, you know, Jupiter is kind of like somebody who's like, they're wandering, they're always out there, you know, they're doing outdoorsy things. And Saturn's like, yeah, but I need you to kind of like check in and like focus on me. Anyway, so that's what's going on. There's always a test in relationships when you see Saturn squaring your 7th house lord, and that's going to kind of happen throughout the year. There is some possibility for Virgo and Virgo risings that there is either a reevaluation of relationships later in the summer going into the fall with Jupiter in the 12th, or not always being around each other, not always seeing each other, although Jupiter and Saturn will trine. So let's say if these things were to happen, you know, August on, and you were like, this isn't working, you could release it, but likely with Saturn it would be more definitive, where you're like, yeah, I'm not going, you know, round and round anymore. It's like it either works or it doesn't. For him, and this was for Titus, okay, so he's Cancer rising. We've looked at this chart, but it's been a while, but Cancer rising, he's got his sun in Aries, he's got his moon in Capricorn, and he's got this grand cardinal cross. So like his chart is cooked. Like there's a lot of angles on his chart where, you know, the karmic responsibility moon of relationships is kind of challenged by, you know, Saturn and Pluto heaviness with his past relationship, what his parents went through, what he's kind of experienced in relationships. And also it squares his sun, which is going to be issues pertaining to his status, his career, and his work. So he always kind of constantly feels every 7 years there's a pretty dramatic change in relationships, either his job, his relationships, or his home. What you need to watch for is Saturn is actually ruling his, oops, sorry guys, I bought my computer. Saturn is actually ruling his 7th house, and it is moving through, there we go, Aries. So it's not quite opposing his Saturn yet. Sorry, did I lose it? You want me to plug it in? From the port or from the little connector? Oh. Sorry guys, give me a second. Sometimes when I bump this, it disconnects. Better? Okay. Sorry, Rachel. Rachel says he has mom trauma. All right. So, yeah, I mean, obviously he's got Saturn and Pluto, you know, in his fourth house. But part of what's going on is like over the last several years, you know, when Pluto was going through Capricorn, it was hitting his moon where it was like somebody was like, this isn't working for me. This isn't working for me. This isn't working for me. And seeing a lot of like drama in relationships where it was kind of off and on. And that was squaring his Pluto and his Jupiter. Now it's squaring his Jupiter. So it's like, okay, he's past that point. Really what you're going to want to watch is probably the Mercury retrograde over the next month. Just how he's communicating, whether or not he's communicating clearly, you know, whether or not with that Mercury retrograde square Saturn and Pluto, he's able to express his feelings appropriately. If there's kind of fears or phobias about home change, relationship change that comes up because it will oppose his moon. And then you're also going to see that retrograde is going to square his sun. So it's going to be a little bit of like him having to communicate, show up, and kind of be differently, basically, in the month of July. Then you're going to see Jupiter come out of an opposition with his moon. You're going to see down the road when Saturn is experiencing oppositions from Venus, at like another reevaluation point will be August, kind of mid to the end of August, and then the retrograde. So Mercury and Venus retrograde in the 5th into the 4th is like, can he kind of finally move forward with some of these bigger kind of relationship kind of commitments? And he's in Aries, so it's going to be about whether or not a relationship is changing and going deeper, or if it's kind of coming to a turning point. And then next year, Saturn will sit on his sun, and it'll oppose his Pluto, and it'll square his moon. So really, like, the true test is actually going to be next year. It's going to be like next summer. But now that we have both of these charts, when you're like, hey, are we going to make it? You want to look at this. Leo rising, sun in Taurus, moon in Aries. You guys have sun in opposition to Saturn, and Pluto squaring that. So it's a lot of changing the way that you guys relate. Pluto being there is like, we're not friends. We're either together or we're not. And it's squaring your sun. So it's trying to also get him to really show up and kind of like be more out there and like committed to the relationship. And maybe it involves children. I think you have kids, right? So it's like about how your relationship potentially changes because you're like, well, you're with me. I've got kids. Like if we're going to have a future, you know, are we considering that together? Is that a path? And Saturn's hitting your Venus and your moon this year. So that's definitely testing your guys' personal philosophy of, well, could we be together? Is this a thing? And sometimes when Saturn hits your guys' composite Venus, there's a more serious commitment. Other times it can test you to the point where you're like, this isn't working. So Saturn will pass your Venus. It'll pass your moon. But it's going to be a couple years before Neptune's sitting on your Venus. And that's probably what you're going to want to kind of check out. And also eclipses that are going to happen on your ascendant and your descendant. And Rachel says, wondering if he will get me prego on accident. The retrograde could bring that, right? Like the Mercury retrograde, the Venus retrograde, you know, was something I would watch in his chart, particularly in the fall. But in your guys' chart, children's more Jupiter. So if there's going to be some potentially, you know, pregnancy themes, maybe Jupiter coming on to the ascendant in the eclipse in August. And then also when Jupiter and Mars hit the South Node, like I feel like I would have those conversations before it potentially happens in like October or November. That's just me. But you're not going to know where you guys are going to stand. And maybe the eclipse hit was in February. You know, maybe that was it. You know, it was like, okay, we got to start over. And he decided to show up. So the question is when the eclipses start happening in Leo, can you guys still honor this commitment and being together while being authentic and true to yourself? That's really the lesson, I think, of the South Node eclipses in Leo. It's like, okay, is there ego getting in the way of the relationship? And those trines to Saturn on your moon and your Venus means you guys are going to have those conversations about the inevitable future. Do you see yourself getting married? Do you realize I have kids? Do you want children? You know, what does it look like? And like, you know, Capricorn moon in the 7th, he's got Peter Pan syndrome. There's always this sense of being like, I have to have reasons for keeping people at a distance. You know, it's like because of my past, because of my job, because, you know, I don't do relationships well. There's always going to be something. And he's learning, I think, over the next couple of years, especially as the eclipses start happening in Capricorn next year, that relationships are a big piece of the puzzle, that you have to relate, you have to partner with people. You're going to see that be a huge theme in July of next year. And when these eclipses start coming in his relationship chart, squaring Saturn, it's like that may be a time that's like, okay, are you going to commit in a serious way? Or do you foresee yourself being a dad? That's when you're going to start to see the wheel of his chart like really change in a very big way. But, you know, Saturn rules his relationships. He's got exalted Saturn, but it opposes his sun. And he can't let the childhood environment that he had or like the relationship with his parents influence or pepper the way that he does relationships in this lifetime. Right? Or like at least as an adult. And so there's like a lot of like letting go of old preconceived notions of how relationships or family should be. And like he has some issues with people having like authority over him because he's got Saturn and Pluto in opposition to his sun. Chiron's been on his sun also for like the last like year or so. So it's been a lot of changes in regards to his career and like learning to kind of build himself up. But listen to the time periods, you know, come back and listen to this and make a note of all that. But you guys got to get to the end of August and make sure that you guys are on the same page. And then October and November is going to be some of the more serious kind of conversations and discussions. And then the eclipses that are going to be happening next February with the retrogrades is going to be like the final kind of showdown. So hopefully it works for you guys. You have a very, very interesting composite chart. I will say that. With all that Aries, it's almost like you guys are getting an opportunity to kind of reevaluate and reassess who you are individually so you can kind of grow better together. And certainly Jupiter hitting your ascendant could be a lot of fun, traveling, you know, talking about a future, maybe him meeting your kids, I don't know, you know, opportunities for you guys to kind of grow more in love together. Good luck, Rachel. All right, we've got Mia, April, Amanda, and Jacqueline. So I got to put these charts in really quick, guys, before we finish. And I'm sure Amanda sent her birth information, but can you please send that again so I don't have to go through the chat so I can put that in for you? Thank you. And I think we already got April. I'm just seeing that now. She was earlier in the reading. So we've got Mia. We've got Amanda. Let's put that in. June 17th, 1989. And 12:31 p.m. That was in Bowie. All right, got Amanda here. And then Jacqueline. Do I have her in here? December 23rd, 82. $4:49 a.m. Reno. Make sure that's right. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna have Mia, Amanda, and then Jacqueline. You guys are the last people standing, so thanks for your patience. Mia's Capricorn rising, Sun in Virgo, Moon in Aquarius, 8:23:91 at 5:02 p.m. in Fort Benning, Georgia. Okay. She says, what's most likely the outcome for a stalled custody case? I have primary physical custody. My ex has gone rogue and is withholding our children and monitored custody. Emergency order has been stalled for over a week now. Okay, so just to understand, ex has gone rogue, withholding your children and motioned for custody. So the kids are with him, he's got them, and he's trying to get custody. Am I understanding this correctly? So so this is interesting because the retrograde is going to be your transit that's about all the legal stuff that's going on. So for example, Mercury is connected to anything that deals with legal matters through your 9th, family court, kind of like Cancer in the 7th, dealing with partners, 7th house, and receiving some kind of aid or support. And your Saturn. So over the last couple of days, Mercury and Saturn have been squaring where you're like, he's not communicating with me. What's going on? Where are my kids? Children is going to be Venus. And you've had Venus conjunct Jupiter, hidden. Where a partner has children, hidden. Right, they're supposed to be with me, but he has not returned them to me. Okay. So, number one, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to tell you that you may potentially need one here soon. So I don't know how you're approaching getting in contact with a court, getting this emergency order, but with Mercury squaring Saturn, it tells me that you're only going to be able to do so much unless you have somebody who's here to represent you, in some way, shape, or form. I have a lawyer. Okay, good. That's very, very, very important. I feel like with that square, you're only going to be able to do so much on your own, okay? The other thing that's going on is the South Node has been in conjunction to your Sun. So this can represent a period where, naturally you're going to have to get involved in some kind of legal situation. Sun can be your children. That's happening now, and it's going to be going on pretty much until July, going into August. So it could be about a month, 6 weeks or so. And then your kids is Venus, all right? So part of what I'm watching for is when Venus comes into a trine with Saturn, does that materialize as the kids coming back? All right, so that's going to be around June 24th. Now that's one window, all right? The other thing to think about is that Mercury and Jupiter, Jupiter is about to change signs. Mercury is about to return. So if you haven't been communicating, you haven't heard from him, he may return. And you might see that starting right at the end of June. And I'm looking at when Mercury comes into conjunction with the Sun. I'd be keeping an eye on his mental health. I hate to be like that, but I would, because I feel like something's off or it's not right, because it's going to be meeting at 20 degrees. And I feel like, especially with that conjunction happening right around the time that Moon, Mars, and Uranus are meeting, like I almost get the impression looking at your 7th house, I don't know his astrology, but that if something comes up where you have to take him to court, there is an order, you're having the kids brought back, like he could go to jail. First of all, if he's resisting this order or if he's refusing to abide by this order, because hidden spaces, jail, mental institutions, that's all the 6th house where Uranus, Mars, and the Moon are. And his mental health may not be all there. And if he gets the impression that this is inhibiting him from being able to see the children in the future, he may totally wig out. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm just putting this out there and telling you to make sure that you're super aware of just what's going on with him. The other thing is Venus is then going to be going through a conjunction to the South Node, so it can mean that, let's say the order comes out, you know, they're trying to get him to abide by it. It does not happen. He's being asked to come to court for whatever reason in July, and Venus conjunct the South Node basically means that he may be told that now there's only going to be like managed visitation and things in the future because like now he's a flight risk, right? Like something like that can happen. Your partnerships is the moon, and you've got, you know, Jupiter coming into an opposition with your moon, eclipses coming up. I mean, is there a standing custody order, or are you guys still in the process of going through a separation or divorce? Because I'm wondering if there's something kind of there, you know? I'm just asking questions to make to better understand what you kind of got going on. Yes, there's a standing order. Okay. Let me ask you another question. How many kids do you have? And can you send me the birth information of your youngest child so I can take a look at their chart? Because until I see something going on with Venus and Saturn, so it's either going to be Venus trining Saturn that the kids are going to come back to you in some way, shape, or form. My guess is like June 24th, maybe through the 28th. And then the South Node going into Leo and coming into conjunction with Venus could also be another reunion. So that's going to be at the end of July going into August. Okay, I'm going to look at the youngest here because that's going to tell me what's going on. August 5th, 2021. Okay. Lansing, Michigan. And then she's going to get me the time because usually when I'm dealing with like family stuff, I have to look at the youngest child to see what's going on in the youngest child's chart. So it'll likely show me where they're living, where they are, what's going on with their parents, all of that stuff. So not that the other kids aren't important, but this one's going to definitely give me a little bit more clarity with what's coming up. 9:48 a.m. And is this a son or daughter, and what's their name? Just so I know. Jupiter is mom. North Node's going to hit Jupiter, so that's good. Okay. So pretty soon, so he's a Virgo rising, Sun in Leo, Moon in Cancer. And so what's happening is the fourth house is like the mother, and then the moon is the mother. Saturn's squaring the moon. So there's some delay, some oppositional kind of conflict or issues that's keeping, you know, him from mom. And then Jupiter is mom. And Jupiter is conjunct Venus. And then you're going to see Mercury moving away from Jupiter, which basically means there's going to be some big decision that's going to be made, probably by a judge or a court, about where he's going to go. So reinforcing the order, maybe, sure. And then I would assume when Mercury comes into conjunction with Jupiter, based off of this chart, you will be reunited by this date, by August 12th. I don't think it's going to take that long, personally. But I have to kind of put that out there. It could take that long. And do you guys where do you live now? Are you guys still in Michigan? And then the North Node's going to come into conjunction with Jupiter too. So not only will the North Node be conjunct the ruler of the mother, but Mercury and Jupiter are going to conjunct. I mean, I know that's a long way away. That's 2 months away. But if you can tell me where you guys currently live now, I can look at his lunar return and I can see if there's any connection with returning. Okay. So his lunar return was on May 19th. Moon was in the 12th house, hidden from mom. Okay. And then that's going to change here pretty soon. On the 15th, that's going to be the lunar return. Moon's going to be in the 7th. So there's the possibility of having to go and talk to a therapist, going and talking to a lawyer, being brought into court. And the moon is squaring Saturn. So it basically means mom wants him to come home. There's some conflict in a relationship. There's a legal dealing that's about determining where the kid is going to go. Jupiter's the ruler. Jupiter's conjunct Mercury, where the kid feels caught in the middle and is like, I don't know what's going on. Like, these are both my parents, you know? 5/19 is when I had to leave the home. My ex had me arrested based on false allegations of domestic violence. It's a hot mess. He did all of this to try to get custody. Yeah. So it's going to come out. It's going to come out in court. Whatever's going to happen here is going to be about, like, I mean, your son is young, but he feels like he's in the middle. And with Mercury and Jupiter, like, he's just like, I want to save space, you know? Saturn being in the 4th house squaring the moon says that there still can be some conflicts in terms of, like, limitation with, like, connection to the two. And if we look at the chart for him and the chart for you, and we look at the composite. Scorpio rising, moon in Aries, sun in Leo. Okay, so this is a chart ruled by Mars. Mars conjunct Jupiter. So we need something between Venus and Mars. Venus is going to oppose Pluto. So likely until Venus and Pluto come out of the opposition, not much is going to happen. And then when Venus comes into a trine with Saturn, once again, the 24th of June on. So I'd say the 24th of June through maybe the 26th. Venus is going to sit on the sun on July 1st. And then Venus will come into conjunction with Mars around the 23rd. So those all seem to be kind of like the hot kind of transits for when you're going to reconnect with them. I mean, that's got to be horrible. I'm really sorry to hear that you're going through this, but by the same token, you know, the South Node approaching that conjunction to Venus and Venus retrograde, conjunct Mercury, means that there was about to be something that was a little scandalous and a little unsavory and untrue that was going to be either done or said that was going to impact your ability to connect with your children. And if you look at this, the North and the South Node are squaring Uranus in your 5th house, where there's some crazy situation happening with kids brought on by Mercury retrograde, your partner. I mean, I don't know their astrology. I'm not picking sides. I'm Switzerland. But I look at this and I'm like, the person you're dealing with needs probably like a psych evaluation. Like, seriously. Because these transits over your South Node and the squares to Saturn is like, they're going to make up whatever stories they need to make up in order to concoct something to create a bigger issue. And as the South Node is going through Leo, there is still this situation up in the air over who has custody, child support, things that are kind of connected to how often you're seeing your children. That's not going to calm down anytime soon, like clear into November. And then it'll come back up again when Mars is retrograding over your Venus and your Mercury and your Jupiter. I mean, like, I would be calling for a court evaluation. I would be saying that not only should there be an emergency order to bring the kids home, but they need to sit down and talk to a therapist and get something on record. That's like, where were you? Where did dad take you? What was said? Were you taken care of? What happened? Because if you can prove that the kids have been psychologically damaged, which I can see they have been, that may in some way bring some sanity to this situation and kind of like make it required for the kids to be going to ongoing counseling, or, you know, maybe to be doing situations where the dad's like visiting in a way where it's like court mandated, and, you know, there's going to be somebody who's going to be observing, because like something's not right. With Pluto getting closer and closer and closer to your moon, you're going to see more craziness going on with like your ex or your first husband. That's just what's going to happen. Tried to advocate for mental evaluation in the past, but he lies to everyone and pretends nothing is wrong. Yeah, well, it's going to be harder for him to convince somebody of that this time around. So I hope your kids come back and leave me a comment and let me know. But the craziness that's kind of going on is Pluto getting very close to your North Node. And it's going to be really important to create a paper trail. And also, just most importantly, make sure your kids are okay, because not coming home to mom, not knowing what's going on, being confused, sooner or later he knows he's going to have to kind of answer to this. All right, we have got Amanda, and then Jacqueline. You're welcome. All right. Let's see here. June 17th, 1989, 12:31 in Bowie, Virgo rising, Sun in Gemini, Moon in Sag. Please disregard the email about refunds. I thought I didn't get per my quest on time. Thanks again, P.S. Your hair is super cute. Guys, be patient. Be patient. I get so many people who do that. All right. So, Amanda, you have got this Virgo rising. So what is going on and why am I not seeing a message from you in my PayPal? So now I get to go and play backtrack and find your message. My name is Amanda. Last minute PayPal. Okay, Current location, Cape Coral, Florida. What should my focus be on? Watch out for. Thanks. Also getting a divorce and got blinded and fired in October. Still unemployed, but building a business and hoping that pays off soon. So, I mean, if you want to know what to be watching for, the one thing that I would be watching for, because you're Virgo rising with a bit of Gemini in your chart, is you need to be watching Mercury transits, okay? Mercury transits are going to dictate and determine what's going on in your life. Both, where is Mercury in the sky? Is it making an aspect? Is it retrograde? And what's going on with your natal Mercury? And the reason why things are so chaotic right now is because Uranus, which represents your health, habits, divorce, and also your job, is in Gemini right on top of your Mercury, squaring the south node, squaring the north node. So as a Virgo rising, you'll hear, oh my gosh, Virgo, sudden dramatic changes to your status, like your work, like your relationships. So going from being, married to being single, from, being employed to being unemployed. And it brings up a lot of tension, right? That's just if you have Virgo rising. But on top of that, you're a Gemini, so it makes things feel a little bit more all over the place. And it's hitting your Mercury at a 3. So, first of all, take a step back and take a breather. One of the best things you could do this year is teach yourself breathwork exercises. Be contemplating or considering a shift to your belief system. Be thinking about maybe going back to school, doing some training, doing some certification. Traveling. I know it sounds like you got a lot going on, but that's what Uranus conjunct Mercury is, because it's trying to shake out and free you from an old status. So an old job or a career that you used to have, an old relationship that's kind of smothering or kind of limiting. And the north and south nodes are squaring Uranus. So it's kind of this hard realignment that you're doing life-wise right now. And it feels like everything is very chaotic, but there's a method to the madness. Really, it's kind of shaking up your beliefs about your work and your purpose and your career. And it can be really exciting and inspiring because there can be new opportunities that can suddenly come in. You got a new moon in Gemini. That's about to happen here pretty soon on Sunday, right before your birthday. So it's going to be right on top of your natal sun and your Jupiter. Jupiter is relationships. Sun is going to be connected to what you're kind of phasing out. And this means that you're getting ready to set intentions about how to newly kind of identify out in the world. So it's hi, I'm Amanda, I'm single now, or, I'm unemployed, but this is what I'm looking to do. And it's going to be a new moon birthday, basically. So that everything's new this year. And usually what happens, the weeks leading up to your birthday, you're phasing everything out. Everything kind of gets royally flushed, right? Right before you come into this reset. So many things in terms of your career, your occupation, your status, that's all happening. You also have the new moon very close to Jupiter, so it's about new relationships or kind of relationship standards. I don't think you're going to see a lot shake up in relationship land until you get to the end of August, when you have an eclipse that's going to be in your 7th house, which might be the defining kind of turning point before you're finalizing your relationship separation. So that could be any time around the end of August, end of September. And you are really picking up the eclipse in the end of August more in the job zone. So it looks more like employment is much more likely, and changes with relationships by about the end of August. And you're also going to see that there's new work opportunities with Mars and Uranus coming into conjunction starting in early July. But I think this is like, are you considering looking for work in another area? Are you open to training or certifications for new fields? I think the Mercury retrograde is going to have you trying to connect with friends and kind of find community or do some networking opportunities, and maybe reevaluating like the direction of where you're going with your work and your career. And like Mercury's going to retrograde pretty much right on top of your Venus. So it could bring you a better paying job at the end of July. It could bring you, a better sense of security. You could be feeling more confident about what you're doing work-wise. And like, I haven't met a single Virgo rising that hasn't had to pivot job-wise. They either had some kind of crisis with their health and they had to kind of get, time off, or they realized that their work environment was like too much. So, they had to kind of go back to school and do something different. All of you guys are going through that. And Virgo risings, they have mutable, on all of the angles. And I've never seen a Virgo rising that's not like, I do this and that, It's about diversification when you have Uranus going through Gemini. So you might be contemplating, I could work in different industries. I could work remotely. I could relocate and move, I could adapt a different schedule. And like Uranus is trining Pluto. So it is going to help you, maybe learn and kind of evolve in your profession, travel, and maybe meet new people romantically. You will have Jupiter going through your 12th house this summer. So that's going to be like kind of like healing and being away from relationships and kind of like needing a break from people. And that will happen. You will certainly see that from about June, July, and August. And then with Mars and Jupiter meeting, probably the real definitive turning point in working out all the financial implications of like a separation is kind of go down in the fall. So kind of October and November is when that's likely to happen. And you're going to have your nodal return, which is in your 6th house. So it's about health, habits, and work returning. A lot of this is going to be dietary changes, changes to your physical habits. But by the time you're getting into the fall, all these planets are now starting to trine. So lifestyle, finances, job are all likely to change. And having a new moon that's very close to Jupiter in your 10th house tells me that, you're now supposed to be considering your second path, second career, Sun in Gemini in the 10th, second potential relationship opportunity, Jupiter in the 10th. And to be honest with you, Uranus is just going to keep on rocking and rolling. So it hasn't even gotten into your 10th house yet. So I kind of feel inclined to tell you, you may get into work and it's going to be something that's stable, but there's going to be a bigger shift that's going to happen in summer of 2027. You're going to see another one that's going to happen when Uranus Uranus will retrograde. Hold on. So you're going to see Venus and Mercury retrograde in the spring of 2028. You're going to see Uranus finally go into your 10th house, where the hard realignment with your career will be in 2029. So I look at this and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what do you do? Do you do something administrative? Do you do something in education? Is it in media? Because a lot of my Virgo risings are feeling like they are going to completely get put out of their career because of developments in technology, right? I felt like a hermit lately. I can't wait to get back to being outgoing and connecting with people again. I have to remain optimistic. I would say so, yeah. But I would be thinking about the long term of Uranus going into my 10th, South Node going into my 10th, some retrogrades in my 10th. And I'm like, dude, get ahead of the curve. Whatever you're working on, it's time to diversify and to learn some new skills. So that way you can stay on top of things and make sure that you're growing and evolving as technology or your career is. So you're not feeling like you're falling behind, right? That would be the big thing that I would be focusing on right now. Your birthday's almost here. So let's look at that really quick. So it looks like you're going to be turning 37. So you're going to be moving into a 2nd house annual perfection year. So this is about money, resources, and values. So that October-November period when Venus retrogrades there, you got to keep an eye on that. Venus is in your 11th house whole sign. So it's basically you're reevaluating your financial goals, who your true friends are. You're trying to reconnect with community. You're doing some networking opportunities. All of those things are really positive and you got to stay with it. And I feel like part of the Mercury retrograde is prepping you and getting you ready to be like, okay, I got to get out there and like find community. That is going to be so incredibly helpful for you, especially if you are going through some major, relationship or financial changes in the fall. And when Venus goes direct, things are going to be a whole lot easier to kind of navigate pretty much from, about mid-November on. And you may see some opportunities that are really good work-wise and health-wise in March of next year. And then relationship-wise, that's going to be coming later in the spring, kind of going into the summer. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Definitely a season of change in this chart, but embrace the new moon. It's like basically write down everything. You know, whenever I have a new moon birthday, I write down everything that I want, you know, and I look at the house that it's going to be in, and I like put all of my wishes down, and then I put it somewhere safe. And then usually, you know, at the end of that year, I read that list and I find a lot of those things actually happen. So definitely consider that little ritual for your new moon. All right, and then we have Jacqueline. So let me pull up her chart. All right, so I've got you here December 23rd, 82 in Reno, 4:49 a.m. Trying to reignite my intuitive senses and find the right path. I care for so many. I feel like I cannot move when I am alone. I don't have motivation. Just thinking about the idea of getting out is terrifying alone like today. What is wrong? All right, well, let's take a look. So probably the feeling that I'm getting is a combination of a couple things. One is wherever Mars and Pluto is going to have a pretty big impact on you. And like Mars is moving through Taurus right now. So it's starting to come into your 7th house, which is kind of like feeling like I have to deal with people, but I don't want to deal with people. And it's meeting with the moon. So just the concept and the idea of going back and forth with them feels a little overwhelming, and it's like a little bit too much. And Uranus is there too. So it's been kind of shaking up things in relationship land for like the better part of the last like year. Anyway, trying to get more creative is more connected to your 5th house. And, you know, Saturn is on the cusp of your 5th house. So there is this calling maybe to feel like, okay, I can be more creative. I can do things that make me happy. But oftentimes Saturn going through your 4th, going into your 5th house is kind of like, okay, I've been stuck at home. It's like I've thrown the anchor overboard. I don't know how to get out of the house. Literally just putting one foot in front of the other and getting out of the house is so important when you have Saturn there. Doesn't matter what you do. Saturn going into the 5th house for a Scorpio rising, if it's in Aries, and I've had a couple Scorpio risings, and I've been like, dude, you guys have to go to the gym or find a studio where you have a sauna, or maybe you guys want to go and take an art class, very much 5th house, where it's about form and something you create. Martial arts can be really good. So go and taking like self-defense classes, especially with like all that like Aries and Scorpio that you've got going on, could be helpful. Neptune's also been conjunct your moon. Actually, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction was right on your moon. So since February, it was probably marked with just feeling like you can't get out of the house, and you're kind of like depressed, and you're isolated, and you're kind of like stuck. And the moon represents major emotional transformation and renewal. So the good news is Neptune's moving away from your moon. Saturn's going to move into your 5th house. So it's giving you the opportunity to focus on creativity, personal fulfillment. Granted, Saturn and Neptune have been squaring your Sun and your Neptune, where this is a chart that's very financially focused. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but like Sun, South Node, Venus, Mercury, all in your 2nd house is I got to make money, I got to produce, I got to work, I got to be busy, I've got a life I have to maintain. And just to give you an example, right? So like, you know, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I've got Sun and Mercury and some other heavy hitters that are in my 2nd house. And I think about when Saturn went through my 5th house, and I was like, yeah, making money and working is great, but like, what am I doing just for the sake of doing it? You know, not because I want to make money, or not because I have some grandiose plan, like just creating for the sake of creating. And I think that was like a lot of my lesson when Saturn went through my 5th house. Now, at first it was marked with feeling like, well, I'm not really fulfilled, or there's something else I want to do. And, you know, I'm just going to go and create. I'm going to, you know, kind of do it and have zero expectations. And like one of the things that manifested from that period was like coming on YouTube, you know, it was like, well, what else am I going to do? Might as well have fun with it. And so Aries is going to represent something you have to do different. And it's about kind of meeting yourself in a different place. And the 5th house can be about creating, playing. It could be about your childhood. It could be about your love life and hobbies and things that you can do alone. Now, what you're finding is that Saturn and Neptune are squaring your North and your South Node, where you're like, okay, I have to be willing to take risks. And whether that's in romance, if that's going to be in hobbies, if that's going to be in investing or the markets, to get out of feeling like it's all work and consuming, and also soul consuming with the North Node in Cancer in your 8th. Now, I believe, you know, you're in a period where come July, with Neptune as far away from your moon as it's been, and Saturn going into the 5th, things will improve. You're also going to notice that the Mercury retrograde is going through your 8th house, which is about your emotional and your kind of like psychological self. And that it's just trying to get you to like rethink, you know, where am I kind of stuck in these old patterns? Where am I in patterns of fear? Where am I reluctant maybe to ask for help? It is highlighting Mercury connection to, you know, Uranus. So it's like usually this is like a chart where somebody would be like, I'm going to go and talk to an astrologer, you know, or I'm going to talk to a therapist, or, you know, I'm going to try to like meet somebody who's going to kind of like liven my life up. And with Mars and Uranus meeting in your 7th, if you're single, you're about to have some people come into your life that are going to kind of rock your world very unexpectedly. Or there could be a lot of, you know, having to confront relational issues with siblings, with neighbors, whatever. But I'm hoping that it's like people who come into your life that support you and help you better understand that you have to get out of your funk. Watch the Mercury retrograde. I think it's really just trying to get you to let go of old things emotionally that have been bothering you. And if it does mean that you need to talk to a coach, talk to a mentor, you know, talk to a therapist, do that during July. I think it's a wonderful time to do that before Neptune comes back on your moon and Saturn goes back into your 5th. And it is possible you feel a brief period where you're kind of back at home a little bit more in September. And I would be keeping an eye on just isolation tendencies and hiding out in the fall, because you're going to see some retrogrades in your 12th house that could represent, okay, I'm getting a little too comfortable staying home again. Where do I need to get back out there and connect with community? Those retrogrades are going to go into your 11th house. And that'll be happening more in November. And then by the time that you're getting to the beginning of next year, you know, in January, Neptune's moving off of your moon. Great. It's moving out of a square with your sun. Great. There's some sense of, you know, emotional renewal, feeling more joy, I think feeling happier. And then you're going to see Saturn's going to go into your 5th house and it's there to stay. So it's a 1-year transit that you're basically going to be in. And just my experience, having Saturn and Neptune in the 4th house natally, it's like you spend too much time at home and you become like a house cat. You get kind of weird. So you have to get out, and you can't let heaviness or moods or fears or even like emotions, you know, make you feel like trapped or make you feel stuck. And if you're wanting to do intuitive work, you know, and if you're wanting to kind of bring in this sense of feeling more kind of grounded intuitively, you have to do it in new ways, right? You have Sun Neptune conjunct natally. So there's no doubt that you're really sensitive and you're receptive, but this is like what do I have to buy to be connected? What crystals, what herbs, what tarot decks, like all of this stuff. And I would be saying with Saturn and Neptune closer to your moon, kind of going into your 5th house is, you know, how can I learn how to do that without all the bells and whistles, right? Like something my mentor used to say to me all the time is like, you know, you don't have to have the charts, you don't have to have the cards, you don't have to have all that stuff. Just like tell people what you see. And I'm like, that makes no sense. And she's like, well, you should be able to do what you're doing, like in the middle of like a tropical storm, holding on to like a palm tree with one hand. She's like, you shouldn't need anything. You're just the channel. And so when I look at your transits as Saturn and Neptune, it's you're learning how to channel something in a new way where you don't necessarily need all of the tools. Seeing a lot of Sag risings, because you're a late Scorpio, that's going through this, and they're like, I'm creating my own oracle deck. I'm creating my own, you know, divination set. I'm, you know, creating my own kind of divination kind of like, you know, program. Or maybe I'm painting things and I'm channeling the healing or the messages through what I'm painting, or like what art I'm creating. So part of the frustration is you're going from the old ways, Capricorn, to the new ways, and you have to kind of redefine that. And in order to kind of feel that inspiration, you have to create, you have to play, and you have to make something that's unique and it's your own. So I'm hoping that you can have the opportunity to do that and kind of express some of those creative, intuitive ideas differently. Work with the element of fire. So maybe like fire scrying, candle dressing, wax divination, or maybe you're kind of scrying wax. It could also be anything that's connected to scrying in general is very kind of like Neptune. So with Saturn and Neptune being there, I don't know, maybe you're learning like, you know, new kind of fire scrying or like scrying methods, and maybe kind of like magical like products or other things that you're kind of mixing and you're kind of burning. Very heavy transit square to your sun. I mean, eek! And that's at a real critical point because it's squaring your north and your south node. You see, with your moon in the 4th house, it means that you're having to connect to ancestors, and there's ancestral karma and things that you're working through and things that you have carried. And like, you know, with this transit, I would be like, it's probably a good time to work with a healer and be like, why am I carrying this stuff around? Like, this is not my stuff. And like, you're getting hit with it, but you're getting hit with it because To me, it looks like it's coming through your mother's lineage, and it's stuff that you're carrying in your body. You know, not to freak you out, but like you'd be a really good candidate for going and working with a healer and doing something that's going to be like a cleansing or a purging or like a healing ceremony, because the moon is kind of connected to some of that stuff. And also work with heat, warm colors, warm drinks, warm food, warm spices, bright colors in your house. You got to let the sun shine in. You can't do the Scorpio rising thing where you just shut down, right? You can't, you know, sit in the dark, because it's going to make you feel worse and it's going to affect your mental health. Bring in the light. That's going to help you start to kind of neutralize some of these heavier energies. And hopefully that's helpful in giving you a little bit of insight with, you know, how to navigate some of the Saturn Neptune stuff. Unfortunately, you know, Aries moons, they thrive when they're alone. You just don't realize it because it squares your sun. And Venus, you know, rules your 7th house, and you've got Saturn squaring your Venus. So this is not a relationship time. This is a time that's about what you create, what you're doing, and learning to express yourself and learning to kind of love yourself. And when you treat yourself very well, when you go through a Saturn in the 5th house transit, likely you end up kind of setting the stage for what your standard is in relationships, and you're not kind of just letting anybody in, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. Definitely some crazy, crazy transits. So give me some feedback and let me know when you when you see some of these things kind of manifest. Go and learn about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. That in itself is just going to majorly emotionally kind of cook you. And so that's going to be lingering for a little bit, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with me on Friday. I really appreciate it. I hope you liked this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell button below so that way you get alerts for more of my videos. I'll be here next Friday doing live tarot. Don't forget to subscribe so that way you guys can catch my other videos coming out later this week. Sunday's Astro Weather, we're going to be talking all about Chiron going into Taurus. And guess what? If you guys remember, if you are supporting my channel at any level, you guys can go and watch that now. You guys get early preview of that. So go and check out that video. Let me know what you think. I do predictions for all 12 signs. And if you guys are interested in learning astrology or getting a reading with me one-on-one in person, click the links below. Head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. We are getting ready to launch pretty soon my level 3 mastering astrology course. We're going to have 1, 2, and 3 out. So make sure you guys go to my website, sign up for my newsletter, and you will get an email when those courses become available, and all the other specials or kind of previews that I'm going to be doing. We had a lot of stuff going on this year. Eclipses are coming soon. We've got some crazy retrogrades at the end of the year, so I have a feeling I've got some webinars and things coming, so you don't want to miss that. I hope you enjoy your weekend. I'll see you guys back here very soon. Enjoy this new moon in Gemini, and I'll see you back on Sunday. Take care.